Hey, Matea, how are you, man? Good, good. Very eventful day, I assume. Have you been following the the bombshell that dropped on the Thanksgiving Day? Ironically, okay. Matea, have you been following the bombshell that dropped ironically on Columbus Day, as if to kind of send a message? Um,
Yeah, kind of back and forth, as I can. Uh, I haven't really watched the video or the main say press release of what the RCMP's allegations are, but it all sounds pretty you know pretty crazy, and India's response saying, well, I posted something about this earlier, like what they had said after they'd already been presented with evidence, and it was pretty let's see, it wasn't that, it was only earlier today. Yeah, where I quoted, India now reserves the right to take further steps in response to these latest efforts of the Canadian government to concoct allegations against Indian diplomats. And that was like the last line of that release. And I was like, well, how, and that was October 14th, 2020, this year, obviously. And just the way just the way that last line sounded, like, oh, well, we'll just do whatever it takes. And I'm like, oh, so you're doubling down. Great.
Yeah. For the benefit of Matea, I'll just set the context up for people who might be listening to this later. Just set the context up, and maybe because it's good that you have not listened, we can probably, it's a short press conference, we can probably watch that video together. And let me see if I can adjust the settings here and show you. Actually, I'm also live streaming, so people who can, let me see if I can switch on my camera. Oh, there's no way to switch on my camera on this one. Hopefully there is. Oh.
Yeah, it may be a setting when you first start the space. I'm not sure.
Oh man. Yeah, that was the setting. Let's do one thing. Let's drop this space and restart it if that's fine with everyone. And let's do that, Matea. Let me restart it because I want to start it with the camera so you guys can watch my screen as well. My live stream is still on. You guys can go and watch me on the live stream and come back and join the space. I'm going to drop this and restart the space. Sorry about the confusion, guys. Yeah. Yeah, we'll wait for 1 or 2 more minutes for Matea and other people who just were on the other space to join, and then we'll start. Quite a quite an interesting, like I would say, one of the most eventful days. Pretty much reminiscent of the day when I think it was. Oh yeah, here is Matea. Welcome back, Matea. Yeah. So Matea, like today is exciting. Like honestly, like this this bombshell spoiled my day. I had a pretty busy day planned at work, and had so much planned to do so much. I just couldn't get my mind to work on it because of the like this is not a these are not small but the revelations that RCMP came with. I think it's kind of a monumental day, uh, not only in this case, and we'll talk a bit about the case because many people who will probably just hear the recording of this space, and probably many Canadians and many fellow patriots, Americans, are waking up to the reality of what is going on and what is this issue going on with India and the Sikhs and Canada and murders and death squads. Now it is all over the news and everybody's interested. I was surprised. I was actually out there at my house. I had called a contractor to come in and do finish my basement because I'm so lazy. I can't do that work on my own. And then this contractor kind of brought up the topic and he said, "What's going on with that guy they murdered?" And he was watching the news. And I said, "Hey, dude, you know about it?" He said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been following what's going on with you in India and all this stuff." So it was amazing.
Obviously,
Yeah.
speak.
It was amazing. I think it's a good thing. I think like not from the perspective that it is a good from a Sikh perspective. I think it's good from an American perspective because people are starting to get educated about India. People are starting to take interest, and that is really needed because people always ignore that India is this benign, spineless kind of a entity nobody cared about. That's fine, but now it is all over in US and Canada and exerts a level of evil influence which is not we shouldn't be ignoring it. And yeah.
If I could just quickly piggyback off that, you're right. The mentality in the West has been for a long time that it's just the land of spirituality and benevolence when clearly that's not the case.
That's right. And I think it's like there are these two extreme views of India, or I would say three views. One looks at it as this land of spirituality. There's another which looks at land of spirituality and Gandhi. And then there's another which looks at this little poor land, poor people who have nothing to eat and blah, blah, blah. But what they miss is that, yes, India people are more poor than even sub-Saharan Africa. Majority of Indians live like that, but it's top 10%, and 10% of or 15% of 1.5 billion is not a small number. That casteist elite is the worst, fastest, and Nazis that you can actually ever encounter anywhere in the world, and they are smarter than you. Okay, so that's the part, and they're narcissistic in nature and parasitic in nature, and they're out for world domination in a very sinister way. And so hopefully, you know, the murder of a Sikh, the father of two children, like a man who was like a community guy right outside his own place of worship, is going to kind of have will bring to this to fore what India is, and people will start taking interest. So to give a background to people who are just joining, uh, you know um India last year actually murdered a Canadian citizen. His name is Sardar Harjeet Singh Nijjar, a plumber with two boys, young boys. He was raising, typical immigrant success story of, immigrant's dream come true. Very hardworking guy, very much well respected in the community. Played a key role in kind of all the things that happen in BC. He lived in the Surrey area, was at the forefront on all community activities, especially when the fires ravaged British Columbia. He actually hired a helicopter to supply relief material in different remote places in BC. So very well respected by not only the Sikh community but also the other white community and the Chinese community in his area. And he was actively also part of a peaceful referendum movement which was conducting a referendum to basically create public opinion to force Indian government to grant autonomy and same civil rights to minorities in India. And um, and that was not, Indian government didn't look at it in positive light, and they basically had a death squad and hired some assassins and assassinated that person right outside a gurdwara, which is his place of worship, when he, on the Father's Day. I think it was 18th June, if I'm not wrong, 2023. And 50 bullets were pumped into his body. 50 bullets were shot at him. 35 kind of found their mark on his body, so he died on the spot, right outside the in the parking of his place of worship. And that luckily or unluckily for India, the Canadian investigators found out that this murder was being orchestrated, planned by the Indian government to the highest levels of their national security advisor, prime minister, and whatnot. And but it was not a it was no secret, because after this guy was murdered, the Indian national media, including the prime minister of India, celebrated the murder on their national TV. The Prime Minister Modi actually went into the elections last year claiming that, look, we kill all those who kind of criticize our government right in their homes. That was the statement he made. The typical term he used was ghar mein ghus ke marenge, that we will enter their house and kill them. And um, and he basically shamelessly paraded around in India with this kind of a narrative. And their national TV in India was kind of making fun of this guy, making fun of Canada, and kind of claiming, now look, now we have come to the world stage where our intelligence agencies can go and murder Americans and Canadians on their soil if they say something that we don't like. So it was more like in India, by their casteist elite, not by average Indians. Like, they can't even have enough food on their table. Honestly, 80% of them live at less than $2 a day. So it's that casteist elite, the ruling elite of India, basically celebrated this murder almost for, I would say, for a period of 3 or 5 months. And it was in 18 September 2023, last year, when because Canada was talking to India to kind of tell them that, hey, your guys were involved, let's just figure out who are these people, let's just punish them. But India wouldn't have nothing to of it, and they kept rebuffing Trudeau. So Trudeau stood up in the parliament on 18 September 2023 and revealed to Canada that, hey, this citizen, this Canadian, the Sikh Canadian who was murdered, we have credible information that this was orchestrated by Indian government, and they are not cooperating with us in kind of figuring out who were the diplomats or officials involved in this murder. So that caused a diplomatic row. India still didn't listen. India was still kind of treating Canada as this third rate power they don't have to listen to. And what happened was then US actually came into the picture. The Indians were not apparently planning to murder Canadians. They were also planning to murder many Sikh Americans who were speaking or saying anything which the Indian government did not like, or especially if they spoke about human rights of Sikhs and my Christians or Muslims in India and Dalits, the untouchables. And Sikhs are at the forefront of championing the civil liberties of minorities across the world. So they were also having a hit list of almost basically it was an unlimited hit list. they were trying to hire assassins within US, where and then apparently they didn't knew that the assassin that they hired in US was a DEA agent. And the DEA agent then played them along and recorded a lot more evidence where the this Indian high-ranking official is calling the assassin on his cell phone, and also had some money paid to him, like $90,000 or something, and then kind of saying we have this list and we are going to give you 2 to 3 targets every month for an unlimited period of time. So there's a lot of dollars, millions of dollars to be made. Unknowing to that poor chap, the DEA agent kept recording all those phone calls, and eventually, there is an indictment filed in the New Jersey, I believe, court, and wherein they charged this Indian person, and this Indian person who was actually trying, Indian official who was trying to hire the assassins in US. He traveled to Prague by some chance, and then Americans actually arrested him in Prague, and now he's and brought him back, extradited him uh, to 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 New York. So right now he's in the New York jail, and there's an indictment against him, plus many high-ranking officials of Indian government. So, so all this was going on. Apparently, this caused a chill between the relationships of Canada and India, as well as US and India. Uh, but India started taking a two-track diplomacy, a very clever tactic. What they started doing was they kept rebuffing Canada, because Canada is apparently does not have enough leverage or is not powerful enough to safeguard their citizens in Indian eyes. But they kept kind of saying to America that, we will investigate who is this guy who was trying to kill Americans, and they basically publicly even said they have formed some investigation committee of theirs, which has been inquiring out for lot many years, but nothing happened. Okay, so the Indians became so brazen that they even threatened to bomb Canada. They're in their national TV, they would every day, their high-ranking diplomats will come and they'll kind of make irresponsible comments like, we will drop nuclear bombs on Canada, we will do this to Canada, and Canada is nothing, we will do whatever we want to do in Canada, we will fund whatever political party. Apparently the Indians believe that they have the Conservative Party of Canada in their pocket. I don't know how true that is, but that's a belief in India, and they see the conservatives kind of getting very cozy with the Indian American diaspora, celebrating the lot of Hindu festivals. So it's their belief, and they think that like, okay, we have enough votes and influence within Canada to even influence elections, and next time we are going to bring the Conservative Party, so they will be more more probably in their eyes. They think the Conservative Party will be more amicable or amiable to allow the Indians to run death squads in Canada. Maybe that's what they believe. If that's what they believe, I can tell you they are really they are living in a fool's world. And but anyways, so that was going on, and then things cooled down for a bit, because there was nothing new information coming out. There were 4 people caught in Canada for that murder, and they were produced in the BC court in Vancouver, but there was not much information coming out. So there's one indictment now in New York against high-ranking Indian officials. Plus, there is this court case going on in BC where 4 assassins have been caught, but apparently Trudeau has claimed that they were all planned, hired by the Indian government. But the Indians then basically started making lot of noise that Trudeau has no evidence, Trudeau has been lying, like they have no evidence. But Trudeau has been saying that he's been sharing the evidence, but Indians have been denying till now any involvement in the murder, like officially in the murder of Niger, while their national television has been celebrating the murder that we did it. But when it comes to Canada asking them a question, they've been denying. It's been a very kind of, like a ridiculous play by the Indians. But apparently today, a bombshell was finally dropped. That bombshell is that the RCMP chief, I think his name is Jagan David from Ottawa, I believe, the commissioner in Ottawa, he did a press conference wherein he, along with, I think it was his deputy, they basically claimed that they have evidence. Okay, so now basically they're talking about they have evidence that many Indian diplomats, 6 of them specifically, they have named they were involved in orchestrating homicides, extortions, and death threats on the soil of Canada, actively involved in that kind of a work, and that the Indian government has been, using all kind of nefarious clandestine tactics to collect information, to blackmail and target the Sikh Canadians, especially, so that they don't raise voices for human rights, etc., in India. So that was what came out, and after that, Trudeau also came out with a press conference. But this is a bombshell development. Let's listen. What I would say is, why don't we listen to that press conference together? What do you say, Matea? I know you have not listened to it as yet, right?
Yeah. Can you give me just a minute? I'll be right back.
Okay, no worries. Okay, while we are waiting, oh, Rebellious is here. Let me call her to speak. Coin is here as well. Let me invite her. And M Singh is here. Just is here. Skomish is here. Great guys, come on. This is the time to. Today is a very, very important day. So I'm sending you guys speaker requests. Go ahead. And please take whosoever can join. So, Skomish, how has been your day? Have you been able to do any normal work, or you've been caught in the crossfire like me today?
We were just dealing with some cycle of some bug in the house. Well, I did take some time out to sort of look at the scenario, but what really is mind-boggling is no one is talking about the Pierre Poilievre's involvement in this and having dual face. And today he's playing this. He's sort of saying the same thing that Justin Trudeau is standing for, but tomorrow he might change and completely say something different. So out of the 6 consulates, one of the consulate that he was, hanging out and spending time with, makes me curious that how much is he involved, or is he just merely trying to suck the vote power out of Hindus in this whole scenario? Can you also highlight that and talk a little bit more about that?
Oh, absolutely. We will go to that, but if you guys are okay, I would say we'll go one by one. We have plenty of time today. Why don't we just listen to that RCMP press conference today? Because there were some very interesting things which actually were said by the commissioner, and not just the commissioner, especially by what's her name, Melanie Joly. I think her speech after Trudeau's speech was very interesting as well. I picked up certain things, but let's listen to what RCMP commissioner had to say. Right? Let's see if we can pick up what all went on. Okay, so I'm going to just play this out.
The significant threat to public safety in our country. Over the past few years, and more recently, law enforcement agencies in Canada, including the RCMP, have successfully investigated and charged a significant number of individuals for their direct involvement in homicides, extortions, and other criminal acts of violence. In addition, there has been well over a dozen credible and imminent threats to life, which have led to the conduct of duty to warn by law enforcement with members of the South Asian community, and specifically members of the pro-Khalistan movement. As a result, in February 2024, the RCMP created a multidisciplinary team to investigate and coordinate efforts to combat this threat. The team has learned a significant amount of information about the breadth and depth of criminal activity orchestrated by agents of the Government of India and consequential threats to the safety and security of Canadians and individuals living in Canada. Despite law enforcement's action, the harm has continued, posing a serious threat to our public safety. We reached a point where we felt it was imperative to confront the Government of India and inform the public about some very serious findings that have been uncovered through our investigations. There's a violent extremist threat in Canada that Canada and India have been working on over the years. However, these threats are impacting Canada and India's ability to collaborate. Earlier this week, RCMP Deputy Commissioner of Federal Policing made attempts to meet with the Indian law enforcement counterparts to discuss violent extremists occurring in Canada and India and present evidence pertaining to agents of the government of India's involvement in serious criminal activity here in Canada. Unfortunately, these attempts were unsuccessful. Therefore, Deputy Commissioner met with officials of the government of India alongside with the National Security Intelligence Advisor and Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs over the weekend. Through our national task force and other investigative efforts, the RCMP has obtained evidence that demonstrates 4 very serious issues. 1, violent extremists impacting both countries. 2, links tying agents of the government of India to homicides and violent acts. 3, the use of organized crime to create perception of unsafe environment targeting the South Asian community in Canada. And the 4th, interference in democratic processes.
I just stopped it in between. I just wanted to take a reaction before we go further. Anything which stands out till now, what he's been saying? Anybody wants to comment on whatever they heard till now?
Can we roll that back since it was only a couple minutes? If not, it's fine.
Yeah. No. I can roll it back. I want to listen to it again. Actually, I was not paying attention, but there's some very serious words coming out, right? So as you can make out, and I'm like, okay, this is very interesting.
I'll just add just very quickly. I don't want to rehash what he said, but the fact that they've labelled it a significant threat by a significant number of individuals. They're not mincing words now, which is really good. They're being very clear of what the threat is, to whom it affects, and it's of significant. And I think that's really clear in what they said.
Absolutely. I think that's a good catch point. Let's listen to it again because it was interesting what he was trying to.
Significant threat to public safety in our country. Over the past few years, and more recently, law enforcement agencies in Canada, including the RCMP, have successfully investigated and charged a significant number of individuals for their direct involvement in homicides, extortions, and other criminal acts of violence. In addition, there has been well over a dozen credible and imminent threats to life which have led to the conduct of duty to warn by law enforcement with members of the South Asian community and specifically members.
More than a dozen, okay? This is news to me, actually. I missed that in the initial part. So there have been more than a dozen duty to warn, okay? Wow. So that list was more than a dozen, so which they actually were able to identify. I assume that they were able to identify 50% of the threats. So there were probably like 30 to 40 Sikh Canadians who were on the hit list. Wow.
Of the pro-Khalistan movement. As a result, in February 2024, the RCMP created a multidisciplinary team to investigate and coordinate efforts to combat this threat. Okay,
so this is interesting, okay? So they're saying that they established a multidisciplinary force only in RCMP started a multidisciplinary only in February 2024. Wow, that raises questions in my mind. Like, why were they sleeping till now? They should have probably, done this way earlier, especially when Trudeau stood on the parliament place. That would also, answer a bit of the. In January, we had some reports in, I think, Globe and Mail that Trudeau was not very happy with RCMP not going fast enough with the investigations. So that kind of explains that they actually set up a multidisciplinary force only in February of 2024. Wow. So they have something to answer, honestly.
The team has learned a significant amount of information about the breadth and depth of criminal activity orchestrated by agents of the government of India and consequential threats to the safety and security of Canadians and individuals living in Canada. Despite law enforcement's action, the harm has continued, posing a serious threat to our public safety. we reached a point where we felt it was imperative to confront the government of India and inform the public about some very serious findings that have been uncovered through our investigations. There's a violent extremist threat in Canada that Canada and India have been working on over the years. However, these threats are impacting Canada and India's ability to collaborate. Earlier this week, RCMP Deputy Commissioner of Federal Policing made attempts to meet with the Indian law enforcement counterparts to discuss violent extremism occurring in Canada and India and present evidence pertaining to agents of the government of India's involvement in serious criminal activity here in Canada. Unfortunately, these attempts were unsuccessful. Therefore, Deputy Commissioner met with officials of the government of India alongside with the National Security Intelligence Advisor and Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs over the weekend. Through our National Task Force and other investigative efforts, the RCMP has obtained evidence that demonstrates 4 very serious issues.
Okay. Yeah. So just going to take a pause. So then what he's saying is, and I think you guys got it, that it was the earlier this week, so maybe in the Monday, Tuesday last week, when this particular team's deputy commissioner appraised the Indians of, hey, this is the evidence, we need your cooperation. And they didn't respond. And it seems there was an apparent higher leadership meeting where the minister also joined over the weekend and said, hey, here is the evidence. Please, cooperate with us. And I think that's where Melanie Jolie's kind of press conference fills in the gap, wherein they basically asked for them to remove the immunity, the diplomatic immunity from these diplomats. And apparently the Indians just did not respond to both of these requests, even after looking at all the evidence. Okay. Anybody wants to add anything before I move on? Before I to what they heard till now? Okay, apparently not. Let's keep moving.
1, violent extremists impacting both countries. 2, links tying agents of the government of India to homicides and violent acts. 3, the use of organized crime to create perception of unsafe environment targeting the South Asian community in Canada. And the 4th, interference in democratic processes.
Wow. Okay, that's awesome. So the first statement is pretty bland, okay? Violent extremism affects both countries. Of course, if it affects all the societies across the globe, so it's kind of a meaningless statement. But the second one is kind of telling that agents of government of India are involved in orchestrating homicides, extortions, and I think there's one more thing that he said. And then he talks about a second threat, which is they are a third one. He talks about that this is not all the government of no. The second one, the third one he talks about is the government of India agents are also involved in creating an atmosphere of fear and unsafe environment in the minds of the South Asian community. Apparently, that's the right use of term, because the intimidation is not just of Sikhs. Apparently, there have been attacks on Hindu temples, which we all know, are orchestrated by the Indian government. So I think it's a very, 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 very accurately chosen words. Okay. So here in this sentence, he says, creating an atmosphere of fear in the South Asian community. And in some places, he will say South Asian Indo-Canadians or Sikhs. So he would differentiate. So yeah, this is really good. Love it. Yeah, just Singh ji, you want to say something?
I was actually just thinking when I just heard this news that RCMP conduct a press conference and openly put the blames on the Indian government. I was thinking when previously Justin Trudeau make a same kind of statement. Many of the politicians also put blame on Justin, and many of the Indians also thinking his statement could be राजनीति तो प्रभावित हो सकती है. The statement could be that political motivated. But since the RCMP made the same statement, it's really concerning, and nobody could blame like openly on the RCMP and CSIS. They just do the brilliant job, I think.
No. So the difference, Jassa Singh ji, that people were hiding behind a technicality. That technicality was that when CC is an intelligence gathering agency, okay, so the evidence that it's basically intelligence that we know, like they recorded somebody's phone tape, and they know that the high commissioner was talking to this assassin and asking him to conduct an assassination. But that is intelligence always might not be equal to evidence. Evidence is that you can use in the court of law, which you can use to prosecute somebody. So while they might have had intelligence that India was behind it, uh, taking it to the level of evidence is the job of RCMP. And typically RCMP has failed in the past in that job. But the fact that the Prime Minister of Canada is looking at that intelligence and calling India out, uh, should have been good enough for the political parties in Canada to rally around the flag, because this was an attack on Canadian sovereignty. And I was amazed that I would call it like it was a sad day that the political parties in Canada did not stand alongside Trudeau, and they allowed these petty political divisions and vote bank politics for them to kind of overlook the murder of a Canadian by a hostile third world country. And I think this is where people need to, especially the Conservative Party, needs to stand above petty political differences, and really need to act like a patriotic party. And to me, it was personally very sad to see them act this way. Yeah, Coin, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think it's been, quite apparent for quite some time that there's been sort of shortcomings with how intelligence agencies in Canada, I'm talking about CSIS and RCMP, have operated and quite limited. I think that their powers have been quite limited, and I think we've got to be really appreciative of the foreign interference inquiry sessions that have been conducted, and there have been some fantastic input by WSO and other lawyers that have spoken and put forward, and they've had to sort of really put their foot down to say, look, you've got to take in the whole history of what India has been doing on Canadian soil for over 40 years. And they emphasise that point, and they emphasise the shortcomings. So I think that RCMP special team that was established in 2024 February would have been sort of a direct result of that. And February, like that wasn't very long ago. I know it's October now, but since that their team has been put together, they have come forth with these 4 massive things, talking about of such significance that the Indian government, they again didn't mince words when you talked about those 4 points, that agents of the Indian government are killing and intimidating and infiltrating politics and the political system. And this is all coming from this special team, because obviously they already knew that there was credible evidence from the Five Eyes for the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. So having more power through RCMP, it's a good step, because they've obviously thrown more money and resources into that. And I think they're probably shocked what they've gathered in such a short amount of time.
Yeah. I think it's apparent, like that he actually kind of used that word, that they uncovered like the amount of like interference by India, and the amount of the use of different tactics was just as you just hold on. We'll come back. I want to finish off this. This we'll come to you. I'll definitely take you on while we are talking. Just to give you guys a sense, apparently there is a Canadian. This guy Daniel Boardman. He's on Indian television right now, and he is basically claiming he's all over Indian national TV. He's become a celebrity there. Apparently, he's just earning his penny out from India, and he's there claiming that this was a conspiracy hashed and engineered by Trudeau for domestic purposes. Amazing, man. Amazing. So apparently, Mr. Jagan David, the RCMP commissioner, is part of this conspiracy, to help Trudeau win the elections. What an asshole, man. Amazing. Anyways, let me just keep on. Let's keep watching and finish this, because I also want to hear what Melanie Jolie had to say and Trudeau had to say in press conference. I think that was very revealing as well. Let's look at this.
Investigations have revealed that Indian diplomats and consular officials based in Canada leveraged their official position to engage in clandestine activities, such as collecting information for the government of India, either directly or through their agents, and other individuals who acted voluntarily or through coercion. Evidence also shows that a wide variety of entities in Canada and abroad have been used by agents of the government of India to collect information. Some of these individuals and businesses were coerced and threatened into working with the government of India. The information collected by the government of India is then used to target members of the South Asian community. This evidence was presented directly to the government of India officials, urging their cooperation in stemming the violence and requesting our law enforcement agencies work together to address this issue. The RCMP is hoping to address these threats through our relationship with the government of India and the National Investigation Agency, with the end goal of strengthening the safety and security of the Canadian public and South Asian community. The safety and security of our citizens, regardless of their background or belief, remains a top priority for the RCMP, and we will not tolerate any form of intimidation, harassment, or harmful targeting of communities of individuals in Canada. We are seeking the public's assistance in reporting.
Okay, this is interesting. So here he points out we will not tolerate any harmful targeting of individuals or communities. Apparently this is a reference to the Sikhs and maybe also some of the Indian Canadians, but apparently Sikhs. Yeah, so that's the first time. RCMP. I don't remember RCMP having publicly acknowledged this fact that the Indian government. We all knew. I think the Canadian Sikhs know, the American Sikhs know how the Indian government has turned every gurdwara into like an intelligence, den. How they interfere in the community, how they run death squads and criminals and all these kind of elements to control the community and to use them for their nefarious purposes. But finally, here it is, an official acknowledgement, and I can't literally, like, the face of Jagan is kind of ashamed a bit, that they allowed this to happen right under their nose for more than 40 years. But better late than never. Thank you, Canada. Hopefully you wake up. Let's keep going.
Incidents of foreign interference by the government of India. Anyone who feels threatened online or in person should report the incidents to the local police. If someone is in immediate danger, please call 911. Individuals can also report to the RCMP National Security Information Network by calling 1-800-420-5805. We recognize the concern and fear people might be feeling when seeing this news, and we recognize that South Asians are victims of these activities we're investigating. We want to assure all Canadians that their safety and security is at the forefront of everything we do, and we urge the public and South Asian community to remain calm and give law enforcement, Canadian officials time to continue discussions. While the RCMP does not generally comment on investigative matters to preserve operation integrity, we will keep the public updated and as things developed. Thank you. Je vais maintenant passer en français. Des circonstances extraordinaires nous...
Okay. While we wait for, I think that then he starts off. I don't know whether there was a... Oops. Was there quite a Q&A session after this? Like, did they do a Q&A session?
I'm not aware of that. I think there was actually, because there was some posts with people, so they clarified
For the past few years,
the statement about Khalistan, when they mentioned Khalistan, and they said they went on and I think there was, yeah.
Yeah. Let me see if I can get to the Q&A.
Those receive multiple threats, take us up on our
for their own
in this kind of way. Yeah, from an RCMP.
Share that since that exists level of transparency from the FBI that similar
Of the November
countries. Have you
a number
Og and her foreign interference
making sure that we can
that are linked.
individuals across?
On va maintenant prendre des questions de ceux qui se joignent par MS Teams. We'll now move to questions from our MS Teams participants. So if I could ask that you use the raise hand function in MS Teams, and we will call upon you. Si vous souhaitez poser une question, vous voulez utiliser la fonction de main levée dans MS Teams. Again, if I could ask for one question and one follow-up.
Anybody from Microsoft, go MS Teams. Thank you for helping through the press conference. The MS team got free publicity out there. Anyways.
Nous vous demandons de vous limiter à une question et une question complémentaire. We'll begin with Medical Walsh, please.
Hi there. Thanks for taking our questions. Can you please clarify specifically? I believe you just said in French about a dozen people are implicated. Are you saying a dozen Indian agents are implicated? And can you be more specific on the numbers? You're talking about extortions and homicides in the plural. How many homicides are connected to Indian agents? How many extortions? And how many police investigations are currently open that are linked to Indian agents?
Okay, so thanks for your question. And I did say a dozen. It could be give or take a couple minus, and Bridget might have the exact numbers. But I didn't infer that all of them are related to agents. And again, Bridget can add a little bit more information, but be mindful that the charges that have been laid to all these individuals across the country are still before the courts. So we'll be very limited in what we can provide as information. Bridget?
Just to add to that, in regards to homicide, there's approximately 8 individuals that have been arrested and charged in relation to homicides. In relation to extortions, there's at least 22 individuals that have been arrested and charged. Some of these have connections to the government of India.
Oh, okay. So that's news. So she says there were 8 individuals, but I know of only 4. Which are the other 4 she's talking about? Anybody have an idea?
I think they're talking about because there's a couple for the extortion cases.
No. She said for homicides 8. She specifically said for homicide 8.
I'm assuming it's linked to diplomats, which is going to be interesting if that's the case.
So she said there are 8 people currently charged for the homicide. We know in Nijar's case, how many people are there? Like 4 or 6?
4.
Okay.
Yeah, so because they keep saying agents of the Indian government, and you've got diplomats, so it's going to be interesting who those other 4 are.
Yeah, which is the other case? Maybe there's another case that we are not aware of. Let me just rewind this, okay? Let me just rewind this. Let's see what she said again.
It does say homicide.
Just to add to that, in regards to homicide, there's approximately 8 individuals that have been arrested and charged in relation to homicides. In relation to extortions, there's at least 22 individuals that have been arrested and charged. Some of these have connections to the government of India.
Okay, so 8 people are charged with homicides, 22 people with extortion, and some of these have connections to the government of India. But the entire press conference is in the context of what the Indian government is doing in Canada. So while they might have been able to establish, like through evidence, connection of some, the fact is all the rates are not, this is not a whole population of homicides going on in Canada, right? So there are 8 people connected to homicides which are connected somehow to government of India interference. So how many people have been charged or held in the case of Sardar Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Does somebody know that count, or can confirm that count?
I think as of for what was published in the news and stuff, it was 4. But again, that was what was published before this. So who knows? During the
How many of them?
investigation, maybe there's more, and maybe that's going to be made public. We'll see. But I just threw up a post up there in the nest, which basically clarifying that there are 8 were arrested and charged
for homicides. Yeah. Wow. Wow. Now I'm curious, which are the other 4 people? Okay, let's keep going.
Thank you. Follow-up, Monica?
Yeah, I do. I'm just, that's the number of individuals charged, but how many investigations are there? I'm asking this because you're leveling very serious allegations without any specificity. I understand you're limited in what you can say, but you are warning the Canadian public of a public safety threat without telling them what they should be warned about, without saying what the issue is. So what is the public safety threat currently to Canadians? And specifically, how many investigations are open right now that are linked to agents of the government of India?
So I'll start, Marika, and as I mentioned earlier, what we're seeing is intimidation, harassment, extortion, coercion, any way or form that they feel threatened to obtain information for the government of India or through the agent. That's where we're asking the people to come forward and assist the police of jurisdiction with the investigations. As far as investigations, I will limit it to, there's numerous investigations going on, led by multiple police agencies across the country. And I think the important thing here to characterize is that we are all working together across the country to make sure that we are working from the same information, making sure that we can hold people account, being agents of the government of India, being local individuals or organized crime groups.
Okay. So first of all, I liked the question that lady asked, but I kind of also disliked the question. I like the question because that was the question in my mind as well. Like, how many cases are there? Like, is it just 8 people like related to homicide? Like that's not a small number, and directly connected to government of India. That's very concerning, and this is a threat to the Canadian public, and the government definitely owns more information and more action. But the real question to ask is, the media also needs to ask themselves the question, like, is this a question to ask? The media should be asking a question. The Canadian media should be asking a question that how come we have diplomatic relationships with India in such a scenario? That our prime minister have raised the fact, like 1 year back, you guys are sitting here after 1 year, you have figured out some evidence, but what the hell are we doing allowing Indian consulates to function out of Canada, given that we know that they're a public safety threat? And then what is this BS about diplomatic immunity? Like, they've been caught kind of murdering Canadian citizens. We have like all the evidence in our hand. We should just go ahead and arrest them. Like, we just should man up and show some balls. That is what the Canadian media needs to do, and ask and stand behind its government. But what the Canadian media is doing, and what some of the third-rate YouTubers of Canadian media are doing, is they are going on Indian television and they're calling their prime minister a liar, their whole system and the whole country a liar. That is what is going on. So shame on Canadian media for not standing up alongside the Canadian flag. Shame on the opposition parties of Canada. Like, if you guys don't wake up, if the Canadian media keeps getting influenced by India, by Indian money, by Indian, journalists that they hire, then God save Canada in future. Okay. So with that, let's keep watching.
We'll go next to Laura Osmond, please.
Canadian press. Can you hear me all right?
We can hear.
Wonderful. I'm wondering, first of all, if you can start by telling us whether all the confidential information related to this has been passed on to Marjorie Og and her foreign interference inquiry, so that she can make recommendations on this.
What I can say for that is we've had as you can appreciate, that because there's ongoing investigations and the public forum in which the inquiry is being held, it would not be appropriate for us to share information that could put at jeopardy the investigation or any criminal charges.
Follow up, Laura?
Following up on Marika's question, when it comes to accountability for some of these folks, can you help me explain to people what avenues you have to hold India and Indian agent and officials accountable when it comes to more than just the bit players who are on the ground? What are the challenges and what avenues do you have available to actually mete out that accountability that you talk about?
So there's a number of law enforcement actions that we can take. Charges or criminal prosecutions is an option, but it's not necessarily the best option. That's why, for example, we created this national task force, which is comprised of, it's a multidisciplinary team comprised of a number of federal government agencies, which has a focus on investigating and prosecuting, for example, Khalistani violent extremism and also foreign interference by agents of the government of India. Now, I mentioned investigations and prosecutions. That is an option, but it is a whole of government issue. It's a whole of government strategy, and therefore we could apply other disruptive measures to mitigate the threat. The objective here is Canada's public safety, and therefore sometimes prosecutions and charges are not the best option. Our objective is to disrupt the networks and to stop the violence in our country.
Thank you. We'll go next to Justin, please.
There, Commissioner, can you hear me okay? Yeah, I think you can. So Justin Ling, freelance. I'm wondering if you can tell me what the nexus might be to similar plots, either in the US, the UK, or further abroad. We know when these charges were first levied, there was a lot of speculation that this network may have ties to violence or extortion in other countries. Have you found that connection? Have you talked to your allies in the Five Eyes and elsewhere? And do you envision more collaboration between other intelligence services and this investigation?
Thanks, Justin, and I'll let Bridget respond, because we've had meetings with our FBI colleagues on this matter, and I'll let Bridget to provide you just a summary and maybe highlights of some of the commonalities.
Yeah, so foreign interference is a global issue, and we work and collaborate, and we have strong relationships with our Five Eyes partners to combat this threat. In relation to this matter specifically, as the Commissioner said, we have met with our counterparts, we have shared information. There are some connections with threats in other countries. I'll remind you of the November 2023 US indictment against Nikhil Gupta, which indicates that there was also a plot to kill individuals in Canada.
Justin, if I can add, what we're seeing here, I doubt it very much if they have a different way of operating in different countries. I think the operation that they conduct in foreign countries is probably similar around the world.
Follow up, Justin?
Yeah, just as a follow-up, I hear you when you say that some of this may not result in criminal proceedings. I know obviously have been charges laid. Some of this may wind up in the foreign interference inquiry. But I'm wondering if you can envision how kind of the totality of this evidence will be eventually made public, if it will be at all. You referenced the Gupta indictment from the FBI that contains enormous detail about how these networks operate and what the threat looks like to that community in the US. That level of transparency hasn't happened here in Canada. Do you envision how that might be made public at some point, or will we just have to wait for the court proceedings to go ahead?
Well, yeah, thanks, Justin. The level of transparency, I think one has to appreciate that the way the US does it through an indictment, they actually provide all the information. Our judicial process is not set up that way. Individuals, when they're charged, have a right to a free trial, and the disclosure process occurs once the charges are laid and disclosures are made before the courts, and that's when the information becomes accessible. Because you'd question if you reverse it in our judicial system right now, what kind of a fair process would an accused get if we disclose all the information before the charge is laid? It's two different judicial processes that exist in two different countries.
Oh, so that's interesting. So in the Canadian process, like, I don't know, kind of you're Canadian or what, but like, what is the differentiation he's making? I thought I heard him say that we will disclose all the evidence to the accused. Is that what it is? And they will not display or disclose all the evidence to the public? Okay, so I see a thumbs up. And the American system is that they will share basically the evidence at the time of laying the charge. Is that the difference? And that's public basically from day one.
Yeah, to a varying degree. It's like you, for example, had the DOJ in, against Gupta,
Yeah.
which is sort of stated, but even then they won't give you that. No sort of court of law will put out actual evidence details.
Yeah.
They'll just have main charges. Yeah, because I don't want to. Yeah, so it's about people who are being prosecuted, that they have a fair trial. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, this is very interesting. I'll read up a bit more on this. But anyways.
Bridget, did you want anything? Okay.
I agree with that.
Thank you. We'll go next to Jaskaran Sandhu, please.
That was a nice moment. He throws the ball at Bridget, and Bridget said, I agree with that. Let's move on.
Good morning, Jaskaran Sandhu from Boz News. We just heard today that India is targeting, using the terminology I'll share, the South Asian diaspora. To be more specific, is the main target of transnational repression or foreign interference and organized crime, including what we just heard, extortions, actually the Sikh Canadian community?
A good question.
So yes, I mean, it is targeting the South Asian community, but what we've seen is there's specific targeting of pro-Khalistan elements in Canada, or members of the pro-Khalistan movement.
And just for the follow-up, but we're talking about extortions, organized crime being used. We've within the community have seen that folks have been targeted in these incidents are not just people that are linked to the Khalistan movement or the Sikh self-determination movement. Are you able to share that the transnational repression occurring right now is going beyond just Sikhs connected to the Khalistan movement in some shape or form?
So just in order to preserve the integrity of the investigations that are being conducted by our police of jurisdiction partners, I won't be providing any further details in regards to the specificity of those investigations. But what we've seen is from an RCMP perspective is the use of organized crime elements. And I will say and it's been publicly attributed and claimed by one organized crime group in particular, which is the Bishnoi group. So that's what we're seeing here in Canada. And we believe that group is connected to agents of the government of India.
Okay, great. So while she did not answer the question, but Coin, what do you make of this kind of is it a deflection? She didn't answer the question that is it just the Sikhs who are connected with the Sikh movement for self-determination, or is it Sikhs who are also just not connected, but are just being Sikh, and they're also being targeted? And I don't think she gave a kind of answer, but she said, "Hey,
I don't know why she diverted that, because we're well aware that Jagmeet Singh, he's a leader of the NDP, has a duty to warn."
Correct.
So that's a clear example of someone who is independently not connected. For his activism, it's just for being a Sikh, essentially. But it's interesting how she just dropped the Bishnoi gang reference. Like everyone would kind of know about it. That was quite interesting. And they probably should. Let's see what Baz says in response to that there.
I think this is kind of I think she was just. It seems like both of these guys are so nervous doing this press conference. Like I see this gentleman's face is red. Bridget is like, okay, no, thank you. You answer this. It seems like they are in shock with what they have discovered, and I don't think they have a clue what is to be done now with all this evidence. Like, are they going to go and arrest like the Prime Minister of India next time he's here? Because apparently they might have. There's a news story from Washington Post that, and I have not got a handle of it. If somebody can get a handle of that story, that'll be great. Some American journalist is saying that there's a news story coming from Washington Post that there is evidence of Amit Shah, the Home Minister of India, who was directing some of these operations and murders in Canada. Wow. So that would explain the bewildered face of Bridget and poor Jag and David out here. They're like just normal police people. And they're like, what have we got on our hands here? Like, we have the prime ministers of so-called biggest democracies running death rings. What are we going to do? Anyways.
I think mostly it's because they don't want to let out too much information.
Yeah.
Whilst the investigation is ongoing. So that's why I think they're very nervous to answer questions, and that's why they're holding back a little bit, because they don't want to give too much information into the investigation because it's still ongoing.
Yeah. No, that's true. I totally get it. But like, it seems like they're under a lot of stress because, like, the question was very simple. Like, is it just the Sikhs connected with the movement or Sikhs who are not even connected with the movement? The answer was, oh yeah, it's both. Like, there's no, like, she kind of unnecessarily qualified the target by saying the Sikhs connected with the Khalistan movement are targeted. And then when Jaskaran kind of challenged her, are you saying, oh, there was only that there's nobody else? And then she's kind of not answering that question. So apparently she's come with a brief and she's now nervous how to handle it the moment you are being asked a counter question. Anyways, let's keep going.
Thank you. Pour notre prochaine question, Mélanie Marquis, s'il vous plaît. Melody?
I think Jagan is hoping. I hope nobody asks a question and I can get up and run from here.
Okay, we'll go next to Samira Hussain, please.
News. So just so I'm getting this straight, you're accusing the Indian government or agents of the Indian government of participating in homicide, extortion, intimidation, and coercion. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, at the beginning of this press conference, you said that these issues were preventing cooperation between India and Canada. How is levying these accusations in this kind of way going to create a more fruitful avenue for the two countries to be able to cooperate?
Well, I would say, Samira, the number one priority for us is public safety of Canadians across this country. And you've heard me in other forums where the relationship with the National Investigation Agency has been ongoing. We've been to India for training sessions and workshops with them. They've been here. A relationship, you always have to build a relationship, and it's not because we're here in front of the cameras today that we're not going to keep working at building those relationships, because quite frankly, what they want and we want is the exact same thing, is safety for Canadians across the country and safety for their own citizens within their respective country.
So as the commissioner indicated, I mean, we've been working for years with our law enforcement counterparts in India on the violent extremism issue, both in Canada and India. Most recently, we've attempted to engage with our law enforcement partners to discuss that issue, but also to present the concerning evidence that we've uncovered through our investigations, which we've talked about today, but those attempts were unsuccessful. The commissioner mentioned that the Deputy Commissioner of Federal Policing's meeting over the weekend with Government of India officials. The outcome of that meeting was not what we had hoped. So coupled with the significant threat to public safety, why we're here today as a result of those unsuccessful attempts. We are open and would like to continue to work with our law enforcement partners in India, and we urge them to take us up on our offer.
Okay. That's a very, very, I would say, stupid and motivated question from Samira Hussain. And I'm just pulling up her profile. She is the South Asia correspondent for BBC based in Delhi. So imagine the whole world knows that Trudeau has been following up with the Indian government for cooperation, that there's like statement after statement that India is not cooperating and our hand is being forced. And there is a murder of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil. And she's saying that that evidence should not be disclosed to the public and like let the murder be, and this should be handled behind closed door. And why are you talking publicly? Like, what did she mean by that question? Like, yeah, this is a very, very stupid question at this juncture from somebody from media. Like, I don't know, Rebellious Coin, how did you look at that question? Like, I was surprised that she asked this question. Very interesting person, Samira Hussain. Okay, let's make a note of her. Okay, no comments on Samira. Anyways, let's keep moving.
Just to follow up, I guess I'm wondering, why was this press conference happening today now? I mean, it's Thanksgiving holiday in Canada. Why was this all coming out now?
Thank you, Samira. It's all we've been working on this for quite some time, and the meeting that took place October 12th we did not meet the objectives that we wanted to make sure that we could collaborate and work together and ensure a safer Canada for our citizens. And we felt it was important, based on our investigations, what we're seeing, and the lack of collaboration, is to come out and make sure that we inform the Canadian public of what we're seeing and asking their assistance if they see anything or feel anything.
Yeah, you see that? Like, Jagan almost lost his cool on this one. He's like, okay, what kind of a stupid question is that, you know? Why this time? Like, we had Canadian murder. Like, you're asking me, like, I should not be coming on this day, and why you are upset that I'm here and sharing evidence with the public on a public safety threat to Canadian people, and we are supposed to kind of just keep quiet? It's just amazing. Like, what is the question? Like, and the tone in which Samira is asking this question, I think BBC would do well to look at the background of this correspondent. And she probably is handpicked by India to serve in India. You know, we know how Indian government functions. Let's keep moving.
We'll go next to Katie Nicholson, please.
Hi there. I'm wondering if you could clarify for us how many individuals you have specifically had to warn in Canada of potential threats as a result of these investigations.
So since September 2023, 12, 13? At least a dozen. So when you factor that in, that we're in October 24, that's quite a significant number of 13 people for duty to warn.
And some of them some of those receive multiple threats. So in totality, it's probably higher than 12 or 13. And we've had some still very recently in the last few weeks. Therefore, the harm and the threats have continued.
And what is the nature of these threats, and where are these individuals located in Canada? How many provinces and territories are we talking about?
Hey, Katie, all power to you. We finally have a journalist. Worth her salt, asking a factual, relevant question to the discussion. Like, thank you, Katie Nicholson. All the power to you. Finally took a lady to do the job. Anyways.
We've seen threats across Canada when there is a credible imminent threat to an individual's life, or there's a threat of serious bodily harm. It is the police's duty to inform those individuals. For privacy reasons and for the security of these individuals, I won't provide further details at this time.
We'll go next to Laura Dillon Kane, please. Okay, we'll go to Martina, please.
Hi, thanks so much. This is Martina Stavis-Redneff with the New York Times. Just a couple of specific questions regarding the Indian diplomats that are questioned today. First of all, can you please clarify if these individuals have been expelled by Canada or if the Indian government has recalled them on the record? Additionally, can you say if these individuals have now left the country and whether, as people of interest in your investigations, they would have been protected by their diplomatic immunity and therefore not participated in interviews or potential other, collaboration with the investigative authorities in Canada? I'm talking specifically about the diplomats today.
Awesome, Martina. Thank you for asking a sensible question. Like, I would have loved if she would have asked, are you guys going to let these 6 diplomats fly off under the pretext of diplomatic immunity, or is Canada going to man up and kind of, not let them fly out until they are either cleared by a court of law? They can be kept in a rest house. They can be, kept like in a very nice place if that's what they want. But you cannot allow murderers conduct murder and fly off under the pretext of diplomatic immunity. That's just a bullcrap.
Thanks, Laura. The question with expulsion, that would be best responded by our Government Affairs Canada. We're looking after that aspect. We are looking purely from a law enforcement perspective. There has been some conversations in the past about lifting the immunity for these individuals so that we can interview them, and we were not successful in doing so.
Okay, so till now they have not been even allowed to interview them. Like, the Indian government has so much guilt, it's apparent that they don't even want the diplomats to just have a conversation. Like, they're not even allowing an interview. So, it's apparently clear that, even with the diplomatic immunity, they're not even allowing the police to talk to the diplomat. So that tells you, the guilt right up there. Yeah, just Singh, you want to say something before we move on?
The thing is, what we call in Canada trust in the process. We understand they have lot of bounds. There's like the Canada is very soft if it means about the laws and everything as compared to America and as compared to even India as well. But still, we trust in the process. At least we as a community, I think it's a huge, it's a bravo. They're doing their jobs at least. And RCMP take a courage to have this press conference and raise up the issue among Canadians. I see a wider angle in all of the world. It's not just one killing. It's a series of killings going on. Like first it was Paramjit Singh in the Pakistan.
Yeah. Just I think we'll come to I'm going to stop you there. Yeah. No, we'll come to that. Let's finish this off. I think we are very close to the end. We're going to open up the floor for all those other killings. Okay. Yeah. Take it. Yeah. Let's finish this. We are very close to the close of this press conference.
Sorry, and just to clarify, are you aware whether these individuals are still in the country? And just to go back to colleagues' questions about your efforts to engage the Indian authorities, it sounds like the latest was over the weekend, and you said that you did not get the collaboration you hoped for or had hoped you would get from them. Can you just specify what you did get in your meeting from the Indian authorities that was disappointing? And again, if you could answer whether these people have left the country.
Yeah, so if they've left the country, again, that would be something through our Government Affairs Canada. I'm not aware where they're at with the process.
Yeah, this is such a sheepish answer. He's saying, I don't know where they are. Like, come on, David. Like, You are the RCMP commissioner. You have 6 murderers on your watch, and you're saying you have no bloody clue whether they have left the country or not. If you like, that's fine. They have diplomatic immunity, so your hands are tied. But isn't it your job to track them and make sure where they are? And they are within your reach, and the moment the diplomatic immunity is lifted, yet you go ahead and arrest them. If you had 2 balls, okay, you would like, what a sheepish answer. The ministry will know where they are. That's pathetic.
What I can say is that our deputy commissioner of federal policing, who oversees national security, did try to get a hold of his counterparts to no success. And we felt that the second best option is to join our national security intelligence advisor to the prime minister, as well as deputy minister of government affairs, at a meeting with government officials from India, in which our deputy commissioner plainly laid out the evidence that we had on some of the cases forward, and seeking the assistance and trying to improve and work on a collaboration with them. And again, that did not result in the outcomes that were expected. And this is why we're here today.
So again, very sheepish thing to do. You have the evidence. You should go and ask the Indians, where are these 6 people? We need to interview them. And he's saying, we went there, we put out all the evidence in front of those guys, the murderers, and they basically looked at all our evidence, what we have, and then said, nope, you can't talk to us. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for showing us all the evidence you have, so that now we can go and try to wipe our hands off whatever our murderers and assassins did. What a what a stupid thing to do. Amazing, man. Canada, it's just beyond me. Yeah, go ahead, Cohen.
I think they have very strict parameters for what they're able to talk about. But despite that, he mentioned that the Canadian Deputy Commissioner for Policing tried to collaborate with their Indian counterpart who didn't reciprocate. So who would that counterpart be? Does anyone have any idea?
I think they have. So what normally happens is, like, all the consulates, Coin, they have couple of attaches. Okay, one defense attache, another all kind of officials. So they might have designated some, RNW, like intelligence liaison. So I'm assuming this must have been an intelligent liaison, like the intelligence liaison from the Indian. But who could that person be? That's my guess. And what if that person himself is on that 6-person list? Imagine that. Imagine that. There are 6 people, the 6 diplomats. So there's a high chance that the intelligence liaison himself is on that list. So when you are going to him, but what is beyond me, Coin, is what he says after that. He says, okay, once he refused, then we went to them with our minister, and then we showed them, laid down plainly all the evidence, and asked them, can you please now waive off your diplomatic immunity, and so that we can talk to you guys? And Indians said, no, thank you very much.
I think what they're actually saying is that things escalated. So normally what would happen is that they have a process, right? So obviously this is quite extraordinary. So they have to, like the deputy commissioner has to talk to their counterpart, and India has not cooperated. So for them to have to then resort to higher order and say, okay, this is what's happening, and then also try to lift the, he said that they were not successful in lifting immunity, right? So they would know what the process is, but obviously you need a little bit of a tick on the box from India as well. So all I'm hearing is India is not cooperating at all. Yeah.
No, that's correct. That's one way to look at it, and that is an accurate way to look at it. India is not cooperating. That's eventually the end of the story. But the question is, it's not a secret that India is not going to cooperate. So in that scenario, I hope he was intelligent enough not to show them all the evidence. I hope he was smart enough to just, The way he is verbalizing it is as if they kind of laid out all the evidence in front of them, and yeah, that would not have been a smart thing to do.
Yeah, I think it kind of falls back into his previous position where he's saying, well, we need to have relations with India. It's in the best interest of both nations, etc. But at the same time, they're quite frustrated because they're like, well, normally an ally or anyone that you have good relations with would genuinely want to cooperate in these matters. They're saying that they want the same thing. They want safety, etc., for both countries, but they're doing zero to actually make that happen. And I think, when you say actions speak louder than words, and India's actions are very clear where they stand.
It reminds me of that, that high beta energy boy that you always have in your college who is madly in love with this girl, and the girl keeps rebuffing the boy, but the boy keeps telling himself the lie, no, 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 she loves me, and then keeps going with one proposal or the other. So how many times does India have to they have been on their national TV saying we are going to nuke the Canadian Parliament. Okay, so I don't know what is this pretense about in Canadian system. They are just being too nice. The fact is, Canadians, India has declared a war on your country. Just wake up. Just wake up. Just get your political parties together. This is not in India coming after six. It is India coming after Canada. They want control of your system. They want to influence everything. They don't want anybody in Canada say anything that they don't like, and they think they have the control. So either the Canadians get together and they declare a state of war with India, and it's fine if they don't tell the public, but the Canadian national security establishment has to smell the coffee. The Indians have no doubt that they have the upper hand. They think they are in a state of war with Canada and US, and they are acting accordingly. But is our establishment acting accordingly? I still doubt. I still doubt that they have this kind of a weird feeling that no, India will come around. India is this friend. No, man, the world has changed. There's China. India is in China's camp. India doesn't give a shit to Canada. India doesn't even give a shit to US today. And they are after US system. They are here to gain influence and undermine US and Canada from within. And the sooner India wakes up, like our, our national security establishments wake up to it, I hope, the better. It's going to happen. Just a matter of time. Just as will come to you, we are just about to close, and then we'll have a lot of things to discuss.
We have time for one last question, so we'll go to Mercedes Stevenson, please.
My question, I'm wondering what you can tell us about the organized crime groups that were involved here. I know in the past Iran has tried to recruit the Hells Angels. Was this a particular organized crime group? Were there multiple organized crime groups? What level and sophistication of organized crime have you seen? And to what degree has this been integrated into your murder and violent extortion investigations?
Thank you, Mercedes. As there's ongoing investigations and prosecutions, I won't go into a lot of detail, but what I can tell you is that we've seen a number of criminal organizations that have been involved in the various criminal activity. I mentioned previously the Lawrence Bishnoi gang, which is a gang that's involved in extortions and narcotics originating from India. That group has claimed responsibility for certain activity that was in the public, but there's also other groups which I will refrain from naming at this time.
Oh, that's interesting. So there are other groups as well, and she doesn't want to name them. That's understandable. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see, like what other groups the Indian state is using. So for the knowledge of all the my poorly literate Canadians, who is Lawrence Bishnoi? Lawrence Bishnoi is a criminal gangster which Indian state has propped up. He is basically given a 5-star jail cell in India He operates out of the jail, so nobody can get to him. No Sikh can get to him. And then he is basically, he can give any television interview. He's a national hero in India. He comes on TV interviews. The Indian intelligence agencies allow all the TV channels to go inside, conduct interviews. He lives there in super luxury, but then he has the license. He's been tasked to hire criminals who then cross the Mexican border or other ways, get into US and Canada, and run criminal activities in US and Canada. And they're all basically, Lars Bishnoi, at least his face is being used. God knows if he's actually that much in control. But that is the criminal gang, that is being talked about. And India, everybody knows he is basically the government's gangster. Okay, Lawrence Bishnoi, you can check him. A stupid-looking kid, but being effectively used by the Indian agencies to cause trouble in US.
Follow-up, Mercedes?
Thanks. In terms of a follow-up, how would you characterize the significance of this threat to national security that you allegedly had people working in an embassy under the cover of diplomatic immunity that are linked to murders and violent acts in Canada? And what happens when India tries to send more people here? What involvement will there be in terms of the RCMP in clearing who those individuals are and whether or not you are satisfied they're not connected to RAW?
So, Mercedes, it's extremely concerning from my part, from what I've seen from the last couple of years. I think that the RCMP, along with its security partners such as CSIS and CSE and CBSA and everyone you can think of, GAC, we must ensure that we continue to work together, make sure that the inflow of information is shared with the people who need the information. And we can't, I'm not quite sure of all the diplomatic rules as to can you prevent someone from coming to the country if you have something on the individual. That would be better asked to the Government Affairs of Canada of if there is a vetting process when someone comes to Canada as an ambassador or high commissioner. I'm completely unaware of the process for that.
Thank you.
If I may add, it is extremely concerning. I mean, Indian diplomats and consular officials are here to protect the interests of their nationals that are based in Canada and their country's national interests as well, and not to be part of criminal activity or intimidation or coercion of these individuals. So we take that very seriously. That is, without a doubt, a contravention of the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, but also it goes against Canada's values as a society.
Yeah, great job done, Bridget. Like when Jagan was kind of jumping around that question and not kind of answering, you could literally see, and probably you guys were not able to see, I was watching, like Bridget was really literally seething with anger and eager to jump on that question. And she literally kind of injected herself in this question because she really wanted to answer it, because she is frustrated, it seems, by the fact that India is conducting all this thing here under using its diplomats and diplomatic immunity. And she like, what are we supposed to do? Just watch the Indian, murderers, like claiming themselves to be diplomats, sitting in these consulates and then, running extortion, homicides, like with impunity. And, she's understandably angry, and she should be. And, all hats off to Bridget to have the guts to speak about it openly. And this is what's going on. And the Canadian system has been watching impotently, I would say, till now. Hopefully now they have woken up. Right now it seems like the Americans are just gone totally like wimpy on India. But anyways, good job, Bridget, on that answer.
Voilà qui met fin à la séance d'information aujourd'hui. Merci de votre participation. Si vous avez d'autres questions, vous voulez communiquer avec les relations avec les médias à la GRC. This brings an end to today's briefing session. Thank you for your participation. If you do.
Okay, seems that was an end. But yeah, very, very interesting session. And I know we kind of analyzed it while we were watching it. Let me just try to switch on the camera on this side. Oops. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, Jasaji, go ahead.
Hajibali, the thing was, I was watching the interview of spy known as GBS Sidhu of RNAW India. He stated that he was in Canada before 84 happening, and he said that my agency tasked me to plot the person who is openly talk about Khalistan. He used to visit to Gurdwaras, various Gurdwaras in the Canada and America. But he said that in Canada, I collect the information of the Sikhs in Canada who were talking about Khalistan. I was really surprised, like he was openly collecting the information in Canada, which is really, I think it's, isn't it illegal? He's collecting the information of Canadians and passing it to the India, and moreover, he's plotting something here. And he then moved back to India, and then a lot of things happened after 84.
Oh yeah.
Even even in the on the ANI news channel, they are also running some podcasts. There's also another person of same agency, and he also stated that he visited to Canada to plot some person here to who got the data of the people who are talking about the Khalistan.
Yeah, no, Jassa Singh ji, this is an open secret, okay? So that reminds me of the book written by M.K. Dhar, the deputy person who retired from the second highest post in Indian intelligence agencies. That Canada has been, free field for them till now, to operate, to, bring down aircrafts, to, murder Sikhs, to blackmail them. And all that came out in the Foreign Interference Committee. So nothing that GBS Sidhu is saying is a surprise. And he's not the only one, okay? Every single diplomat that comes for Canada from India to Canada, half of them, basically are involved in these kind of activities, especially targeting the Sikh diaspora. We all know it. It's not a surprise to us. But, finally, the truth is coming out, and, it's coming out officially. That having said, we have this Washington Post article somebody shared, which I was talking about. And this is the one where Modi's Shah's name has come out. Let me just quickly try to find that portion. And
I actually think it's worth reading the whole article, because can I just say Jerry Sher and his counterpart have it's not just about Amit Shah. There is so much detail in this, which is really like could blow things out of the water. I actually think it's worth going through
reading it.
Each paragraph.
Okay.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, let's read it. Okay, guys, let's read it. Okay, and if somebody can do a better job than me, my pronunciation is horrible, but I'll take a stab if you want to live with me. If somebody else has it in front of them, they are welcome to read it as well. And let me, while we are at it, let me just okay. Let me also stream it live on the live stream so people can watch. Oops. Let's just present our slides or the screen. Okay, here you go. And we are going to just read this article. The article is named Canada alleges much wider campaign by Modi government against Sikhs. Canada on Monday ordered 6 Indian diplomats to leave the country, including India's top diplomat in Ottawa, Sanjay Kumar Verma, officials said. And this is written by Greg Miller and Gary Shee. Okay, Gary Shee is the guy who also wrote a previous article. So it's interesting that this comes at 2:16 Eastern time. So seems to have been planned actually in advance. Okay, that's good. Okay, the killing of 6 separatists in Canada last year was part of a broader campaign of violence against Indian dissidents directed by a senior official in the Indian government and an operative in the country's spy agency, according to Canadian officials who cited intercepted Indian communications and other newly acquired information. Okay, newly acquired information, great. Canadian who cited intercepted Indian communications, okay, and other newly acquired information, okay. A senior official in the Indian government and an operative in the country's spy agency, according to Canadian officials who cited intercepted Indian. Okay, great. So this is over and above what is in the New York indictment. Quite great. Great catch. Okay, great catch. Yeah. So seems we'll have lot of things coming out in course of next couple of months, if not weeks. So apparently there is intercepted Indian communications and other newly acquired information. Okay. Canadian authorities have also identified at least 6 Indian diplomats serving in Canada who were directly involved in gathering detailed intelligence on 6 separatists who were then killed, attacked, or threatened by India's criminal proxies. Wow, Canadian officials said. Canada ordered all 6 of these diplomats to leave the country in notices that were sent early Monday. Okay. Among them were India's top diplomat in the country, Sanjay Kumar Verma, and its top consular official in Toronto, the official said. Okay. If somebody can Google who is the top Toronto official in Indian official in Toronto, that'll be great. India issued a conflicting statement saying it had withdrawn the diplomats over concerns for their safety. India later announced that it had expelled 6 Canadian diplomats, including Canada's top diplomat in New Delhi. Great, India. Like, why would Canada have diplomatic relationship with India? It's beyond me. Anyways, the previously undisclosed details about India's alleged involvement in 2023 death of Hardeep Singh Nijjar and other attacks stem from an ongoing investigation that Canadian authorities said has uncovered extensive evidence linking a larger outbreak of violence in Canada to the administration of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Okay, so they have uncovered, I'll read it, extensive evidence, okay, linking to a larger outbreak of violence in Canada, and it is basically being driven by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Wow. We know they are involved in the Nijjar killing, in other murders, and in ongoing violence, actual violence in Canada, said a senior Canadian official. Wow. The official said that since Nijjar's death, the pace of threats has escalated to such an extent that authorities have warned a dozen officials of Indian descent that there was credible information they could be targeted. The official and others spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss the investigation, citing the sensitivity of allegations that have caused a rupture in the relations between Delhi and Ottawa. Wow. So basically, after Canada came up with this, India, rather than winding down, has actually started more operations, more targetings, more threats, more violence. Amazing. Okay. India has vehemently denied the accusations. But this is like, I don't know how can do it. Their national television, officially they are denying, but like their national TV, which is all basically an extension of Indian state, Indian government. India is not like, US where your press kind of can do anything they want to press, basically says what the government of the day wants to say. They've been celebrating these killings and they've been claiming that we actually killed Nijjar by going into his house. And no less than the prime minister claimed it as part of his election rallies. That speech is all over the or YouTube. People just need to Google it. Okay. A statement issued by the country's Ministry of External Affairs on Monday said that Modi's government strongly rejects these preposterous imputations and ascribes them to the political agenda of Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Wow. Okay, great. Trudeau said Monday that the response of the Indian government has been to deny, to obfuscate, to attack me personally and the integrity of the government of Canada and its officials and its police agencies. Yeah, I think this is something, this is very true. I think Trudeau has been attacked personally, not just by India, but by the Indian proxies in Canada. All these, Daniel Bodman, there's another like idiot Bezireng, some Turkish Islamist. What's the name? Bezireng coin? Like I can't even pronounce his name right. Like, what's the name of that idiot? Sorry, what? Mocha, yeah. And then there's Terry Malusky, and then there are all these Rupa Subramania, and all these Indian agents. Like, and then how can you forget the Conservative Party of Canada? Like, what a shameless cucks. Anyways, even so, the new allegations add to mounting concerns among Western security officials and human rights organizations that Modi's government has become one of the world's most aggressive practitioners of transnational repression, or the use of violence and other means to neutralize perceived homegrown adversaries who have sought refuge in other countries. Wow, this is a very, very strong impression and strong statement that they are number one in foreign interference and number one in use of violence and other means to neutralize anyone who has from from India who has gone abroad. And I think one place they are mistaken is if they think that India is only going to target people Sikhs who are speaking for human rights sitting in US. They're sadly mistaken. I have news for you guys. That list has six right now, but it's going to very soon have any white Canadian, white American who dares to say anything that India does not like. Okay. So if anybody is under the impression that this is about India and sex only, he is sadly mistaken or she is sadly mistaken. Anyways, the Biden administration, which has cultivated closer ties with India for what? For getting your citizens killed. Last year confronted Modi administration officials with intelligence that an officer in India's Research and Analysis Wing, a spy service known as RAW, was behind an attempt to assassinate a Sikh separatist in New York, a failed plot with parallels to the Niger case in Canada. The Post identified the RAW officer as Vikram Yadav, though he was not named in the US indictment accusing an alleged Indian drug trafficker of seeking to hire a hitman to carry out the killing. Oh, so it was the Washington Post which identified that raw officer who was in touch with the assassin Vikram Yadav. Okay, great. Nijjar and Gurpatwant Singh Pannu, the target of the New York plot, were leaders of a movement that for decades has campaigned to carve out an independent Sikh state in northern India. The movement was marked by violent clashes in the 1980s, but has been relatively dormant since a crackdown led to a mass exodus of Sikhs to other countries. Thank you, Shi, for making a factual statement. Uh, Modi, who came to power as a champion of Hindu nationalism, though I would have liked if they would have kind of pointed out that the violence was one-sided. The Indian government sent army to kill 5,000 Sikhs at a holiest shrine, and then conducted a genocide of 35,000 Sikhs on the streets of the national capital. So just kind of, I think, just saying violent clashes kind of underplays the or kind of obfuscates the reality of what actually happened in 80s. Anyways, Modi, who came to power as a champion of Hindu nationalism, has revived concerns about the supposed threat posed by Sikhs living abroad. Modi and other officials have frequently accused Canada, which has the world's largest population of Sikhs outside India, of harboring terrorists. Yes, for India, every Sikh is a terrorist, because we call for human rights, basic human dignity, and equality for law. Anyways, Canadian officials said they only recently began to grasp the magnitude of the covert campaign of violence India has waged against Sikhs as new evidence emerged from an ongoing investigation of Nijjar's killing that is led by the RCMP but has involved other agencies as well, as intelligence provided by the United States and other allies. Wow. So they're saying that they are really shocked by the magnitude of the violence that India is waging against the Sikhs. This is a telling, paragraph. Coin. What do you think about this? Oh, just read it here.
Yeah, keep reading. It gets even better.
Okay, great. Officials said the investigation has uncovered evidence of Indian government involvement in home invasions, drive-by shootings, arson, and at least one additional killing. Wow. So Indian government is doing home invasions, drive-by shootings, arson. Wow. Drive-by shooting. So there was a couple of drive-by shootings I heard about. Apparently, this is the Indian government is involved in that as well. And arson. Okay. So there was this talk about that in Alberta. There are a lot of these constructions which are being done by the Sikh contractors. Suddenly they are going up on fire. So it seems that Indian government was behind it, just going ahead and putting a contractor who is just spending all his maybe life's money and trying to construct a house and just put it on fire. Wow. So now we know where all this arson thing coming in Alberta from. Officials cited the death of Sukhdev Singh, who was shot in Winnipeg on September 20, 2023, less than a day after he was featured in a wanted list of gangsters posted on X by India's National Investigation Agency. The killing came 2 days after Trudeau publicly accused India of killing Niger. So even that killing is basically by Indian government. Okay, so now we know the second homicide. Official described an operational chain. In which Indian diplomats in Canada collect intelligence on alleged Sikh separatists that is then used by RAW to identify targets for attacks carried out by criminal syndicate led by Lawrence Bishnoi. Okay. Um whose organization, the officials said, has an extensive presence in Canada. Bishnoi is imprisoned in India and cannot be reached for comment. His organization has previously asserted responsibility for violent attacks in Canada, officials said. Okay, wow. Okay, so the Indian diplomats are collecting the intelligence and then they are passing it on to Lars Bishnoi, who basically runs the gang of killers on ground. Perfect. Officials said the Indian diplomats have used violence as well as threatened to deny needed immigration documents to coerce Indians living in Canada to serve as informants against Sikh activists. Canadian officials said the scheme involves Indian officials at the country's consulates in Vancouver and Toronto, as well as its High Commission, the embassy equivalent in Ottawa. Canadian officials said the collection operation was overseen by Verma, India's High Commissioner in Ottawa. Wow. So basically, Mr. Verma was running a mafia out of the Indian consular office. Great. The caution goes far beyond threatening to deny visas to include physical threats to them and their families in India, said a senior Canadian officials who added that the information is being sent to India at almost the highest level. Wow, this is damning, okay? So the highest level.
Can you just take a moment to sort of understand what that paragraph just meant? So basically, Indian embassy, the government. So if you're applying for a visa to Canada, you're literally pulled to the side and said, you need to do this, and i.e. spy on Canadian Sikh community. And when they don't do that, then they're threatened as well. So it's really, really incredible.
Yeah. No, we all knew that, Coin. Like this community knew that these consulates were like, but nobody acknowledged it. They allowed it to happen for like more than 2 decades, I would say more than 3 decades, where like people's families will be threatened. I have heard so many stories wherein, people will tell, that hey, if I say something, I will not get my visa or my family will be threatened. There was this guy who basically was just do you remember the farmers' protest which happened? And there were like some Sikhs who were supporting the farmers' protest, and there's peaceful rallies, and
Yeah,
like
look, I think it's one thing for, I don't know, stopping dissent or voicing an opinion, but then there's something completely different when you're actually creating a subset of incoming visa applicants that are basically spies, that are sort of, they're not raw,
yeah,
they're just ordinary citizens who have been dangled with a visa, so you must do these functions for us, so that their operational network isn't sort of directly implicated or complicit. And I think that's how I'm sort of seeing it. So
yeah,
they're deploying ordinary citizens of India to do their dirty work for them.
yeah,
And when they don't comply, then they're also threatened.
yeah.
Is that hard? Yeah.
Amazing. Let's keep reading. This is. Thank you for making me read this. I would have missed this. Washington Post, honestly, out of all the other, probably has done the best work in kind of exposing India. So thanks, Washington Post. I have a newfound respect for them. But anyways, conversations and texts between Indian diplomats include references to a senior official in India and a senior official in RAW. RAW is the Indian External Agency, okay, who have authorized the intelligence gathering missions and attacks on Sikh separatists, the Canadian official said. Canadian officials identified the senior official in India as Amit Shah, a member of Modi's inner circle who serves as Home Affairs Minister. Spokespeople in India's Ministry of External Affairs and its Home Ministry, which oversees national security matters, did not respond to requests for comment about Shah's alleged role. Wow, this is very interesting. Actually, this came out of blue. Amit Shah till now has been hiding kind of behind the scene. Nobody thought it would be Amit Shah who was involved in this from India. The whole Indian state is involved, but Amit Shah, interesting. Canadian officials shared details about the references to Shah and other evidence with India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval at a secret meeting in Singapore on Saturday. Oh, so they met him on Saturday. Okay. Canadians who took part in the meeting included Trudeau's National Security Advisor Nathalie Drouin and Deputy Foreign Minister David Morrison, as well as a top RCMP official. So this is very interesting. So, just to give people a answer, who is Amit Shah? Amit Shah is the Home Minister of India, the second most powerful position in Indian system, and he is also, along with Modi, the current Prime Minister, was involved in conducting the genocides of Muslim minority in Gujarat when he was the Home Minister of Gujarat state, where the different estimates of from 2,000 to 5,000 Muslims were butchered, on the streets for just for the crime of being a Muslim. Anyways, Canada had sought the meeting in an attempt to persuade Modi's government to end an escalating campaign of violence in Canada, but also to warn that details exposing Indian involvement in attacks were likely to become public as prosecutors move forward next month with a planned trial of 4 suspects in Niger killing. So next month something is coming, guys, in November. Let's get ready. Instead, officials said Doval made clear that India would deny any link to the Niger murder and any link to any other violence in Canada, no matter what the evidence was. A senior Canadian official said, wow, this is the level of like obscene immorality. Like, what kind of regime does I don't think even North Korea would make this kind of a statement. Even they try to come out as righteous, but the Indian system, basically the evidence is so overwhelming that now they can't say we didn't did it. Now they're just saying we will always deny. You can do whatever you want to do. We don't give a shit. That's what the stand is. Okay. Officials provided other details about the 5 hour. So before I move on, after reading this, quite how can this guy called Daniel Broadman go on like the Indian TV and like I understand, he might be paid, but like at some point, like you should have some shame. Like there has to be some shame, like where it's just some people are totally shameless. Anyways, officials provided other details about the 5-hour encounter with Doval, 79, a former spy master who is seen as one of Modi's closest confidants and has served as national security advisor for a decade. Doval did admit that India did use its diplomats to follow people, take pictures, etc., but denied any links to threats or violence. Obviously, he already said, I'm going to deny. So, because they're taking that intelligence and passing on to their gangster, who's then running all the thing. When Canadian officials outlined evidence that India had enlisted Bishnoi gang networks in Canada to carry out the Niger killing and other attacks, Dowell initially pretended not to have any idea who the guy was, a Canadian official said. Okay, so he said he had no idea what the guy is. Later.
Clarify. So, what did India put forward the Bishnoi connection, or did Canada make that connection? Can you just read that out? Could you just read that again?
Okay. When Canadian officials outlined evidence that India had enlisted Bishnoi's gang's network in Canada to carry out the Niger killing and other attacks, Dowell initially pretended not to have any idea who the guy was, a Canadian official said. So basically, we presented the evidence that here is the evidence of, India running the gang and networks. Okay. Later, however, Dowell began rattling off facts, figures, and anecdotes about Bishnoi, acknowledging that he was capable of orchestrating violence from wherever he's incarcerated and was known to be up to no good from his jail cell. So now he's saying, "Oh, we have no control. Like he's such a Superman. Okay, he's working from jail." Bishnoi is a 31-year-old kid. Okay, Bishnoi 31 is one of India's most notorious mob bosses, officials said, but has also been accused on social media of collaborating with the government while in prison. Bishnoi gangs, Bishnoi's gang asserted responsibility for Singh's killing in September last year after Trudeau's public statement linking India to the Niger death. So, just to let people know who probably are not aware who this guy Bishnoi is, he's a gangster kept by Indian state in ultra luxury 5-star jail cell where he is, made a national hero by India. He's the hero of Indian nationalism. He's the guy, who can go out and kill any Sikh anywhere in the world. And, he conducts TV interviews. His interviews come on TV. His posts come on social media. And apparently he's in jail. Everybody in India knows he is the government's gangster, the Indian government's gangster. So that is the guy, who is being used by the Indian government to, run the criminal elements in Canada. In a news conference Monday, Canada's Thanksgiving holiday, RCMP officials said the violence orchestrated by India had become a significant threat to public safety and that at least 8 people have been arrested and charged in connection with homicide cases and nearly 2 dozen in connection with extortion investigation. Okay, while we are at it, Coin, can you make out when that? Can you check what time the conference happened? This article came at 2:60. It seemed like they are all planned it. Okay, you can't write such an article like in 1 hour. Like so, this article came out 2:16 Eastern Delta Time. Okay, this is updated. Published on 14th October at 11 a.m. Eastern Delta Time, Eastern Daytime, daylight time or whatever that is, which is basically basically 8 a.m. PST, right? Or 10 a.m., 9 a.m. PST, if it's 2 hours. So, at what time did the press conference happen? I think it happened pretty late. Let me go and check.
Did you want to bring Jazz the Juno up so that he may have?
Yeah. I've been asking him to come and take the speaker. He's just not coming. I don't know why. Let me tell you what time the. Okay, so quite very interesting. This article came, I think, minutes before the press conference. Actually, at least from my timetable. The press conference happened. Let me I think they are just playing with the Indians.
No, No, they talk about the conference in Canada as well, so it's a little bit after that. But you're right, they do have details which I haven't read elsewhere about the meeting on Saturday, and that is where all the juicy stuff was. So with Dorval and everything, I think that added a lot more context.
Yeah. And Jasveer is not taking the Jasveer. Come on, man! Like we need you to come and share your share your. I would say not delight. There's nothing to be delighted about this, But like, okay, let me go back to where we were left off. Okay. In a news conference, Canada Thanksgiving holiday, RCMP officials said that the violence orchestrated by India had become a significant threat to public safety, and that at least 8 people have been arrested and charged in connection with homicide cases, and nearly 24 in connection with extortion investigations. Canadian requests to interview Indian diplomats implicated in attacks were rebuffed by Modi's government, officials said. Dovell ended the Saturday meeting by asking his counterparts to treat the discussion as if it never took place. Okay. What? Meaning they should refrain from issuing any public statement or acknowledgement of the gathering. Okay. By the time Doreen and Morrison had made it back to Ottawa, however, pro-Modi media reports had surfaced in India describing how Indian official had taken a strong stance and lectured Canada that it cannot make unsubstantiated charges. Okay, before they could even arrive back, they had this. Okay, great. Here is our friend Greg Miller and Gary Shea. Okay, good job, guys. Good job, Washington Post. Okay. Wow. So Jasveer now takes the speaker. Hey, Jasveer, how are you, man? Oh, hey, Gurji ki fateh.
Yeah, how's it going, man? Apologies, I couldn't jump on the speaker earlier. I'm just a bit busy tonight. I actually took today, can you believe, as a day off after working for 7 days because I just thought it would be a chill day. So exactly, and instead it's the exact opposite. So I haven't had too much time to work on it. But wow, Maharaj Kripa, really, I'm delighted to see these kind of stern statements come out from the government. I'm glad as well that they're not trying to just eke out this information and drop it in a way where they're not really trying to put it in the headlines, and instead it's massive headline news, not just in Canada but all over the world, because that's giving it the kind of the validation it requires. Because this is massive. This is something that a tiny minority community, which we are, just a couple of percent, we've been saying for so long, and it's something that implicates the entirety of Canada. I'm sure the USA will be following up with a statement, as they seem to have done since last September. All of the incidents which have occurred. I'm sure they'll be following up soon. And I hope it adds pressure to countries like the UK following up. I know ABC News have done a major report on it from Australia as well. And we know that they've done absolutely fantastic work. Avani Diaz, a journalist, on uncovering what they quoted as a nest of spies from India working in Australia, trying to secure airport security information. Can you imagine that? How scary does that sound? So, I mean, this is essentially, if I'm, maybe I'm being a bit too happy and a bit too naive about the situation, because we know there's so much trade between all of these countries, which still goes on within India. But at the same time, it seems that this element of their regime is crumbling. India they got too big for their boots. I've made a kind of tongue-in-cheek statement about Major Gaurav and his role, and thanked him for his role in the statement that came out today, because he's been out there on YouTube getting 20 million views, bragging to people, we use the mafia to target the Khalistanis in USA and Canada and this, that, and the other. The Bishnoi guy is writing on Facebook and so forth, bragging again about targeting just whether it's Sikhs, sometimes Muslims, whoever. And they get away with it because they have this association
The
to
skeptic
the
in me would
Indian
say, okay,
nationalists.
so goes in a bad spot.
Sorry, continue. I was trying to find Gaurav's video.
Yeah, please do. I think that, you know what, Sangaji, let's make that go viral. They say, look, this isn't something that should be a shock to India. They brag about this stuff.
Yeah.
So, all of that it's a really significant period. I think that's the last thing I'll say just for a minute, is that all of us understand as Sikhs, this is a momentous time. This is unprecedented, really, in our chapter of Sikh history. So it's groundbreaking, and we've come into a different ground. We should act accordingly as well.
Yeah. And how diluted are these Indians? Like, I don't get it, man. Like, before I kind of bash Indians, is that guy Sarblo gone? He was there in your previous space, Coin and Rebellious. And I just want to make sure, can you Rebellious and Coin, can you warn Sarblo on my behalf? He kind of made a statement, his parents are planning to go to India. We should never use that word. They are planning to go to Punjab. Punjab is not India. Okay, I get offended. And in a cheeky way, but we should use the correct language. If you can tell Sarblo, okay? I heard him making that statement.
About what you said, Ajit, about them being delusional. There's this strange intersection between pushing nationalism or patriotism or what you ever want to call it, and fanaticism and delusion. There's a very thin line between all of those, and they've got it completely wrong. They have created a couple of generations at least where they've got people that are utterly fanatical. They're rabid. They're nearly I don't want to speak too harshly, but we know how many people across India are there that have gotten away with the most atrocious crimes because this is what the regime is based on. It's based on impunity for certain groups in certain situations, depending on what the violence is about or who it's against. There's a lot of delusion there. There's a lot of
talking about delusion. Jasveer, this is the example of this. This guy is Abhijit Iyer Mitra, so-called defense analyst. Okay, he is very fancied and a national hero of India. Apparently educated in West, the highest of education degrees, and this is what he wrote. Okay, and thank you, Coin, for sharing it. Okay, he said India has declared Canada a state sponsor of terror. This means the dividends of the 50 billion plus invested by Canadian pension funds in India will be used to fund terror. It's time Narendra Modi and Sitharaman and Jai Shankar consider freezing these assets, else they will be used to kill Indians. Amazing, man. Amazing. Like, what kind of people are these?
They're on the defensive. They're scrambling. They're stumbling. They're mumbling. Their game plan has been all along for kind of the West to just believe that this stereotypical image of these nice, soft Indian people that are all about peace and love, Gandhi style, and behind it, of course, we know what kind of regime it is, but there's not been any substance to kind of the work that they do. I've just come up helping with the campaign Langar Week for the Sikh community. That was an initiative started by the late great Baijakwar Singh, because he wanted to showcase the truth of the community. What's that community? How many people in our community do we have that spend hours upon hours just doing this basic service, serving other people, serving humanity, making such a great contribution to their communities? So we've got the truth to work with. You don't see that replicated in other communities, and especially those that claim themselves to be Indian nationalists.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, look at this, man. It's unbelievable, Jasveer, what these guys are up to. I just saw this tweet. So apparently, lot of Indo Canadians or Hindu Canadians who have a Canadian passport, they, after RCMP revealed all this, they took Indian flags and they started protesting on the streets against the Canadian government for revealing all this evidence that India is murdering, Canadian citizens. What is kind of idiocracy is this? It's mind-boggling. Wow. I hope this is true. Like, it's honestly like nobody could be this foolish. But apparently, this, yeah, if that is
Yeah,
what,
that has to be my assumption too. That it's just foolishness. There's people. India has created basically a stupid society by giving this kind of very overtly nationalized, generic news lens that here are your enemies and here are the good guys, and it's very black and white. And Trudeau, they've managed to portray him in that way that this is what these people believe. They believe. Remember, there were those ridiculous articles. One, and I hate to even repeat it, but I just want to emphasize the ridiculousness of what we're working against. One MP said that Trudeau had relationships with some of the Khalistanis, and I won't mention any names. Like,
wow.
Like as a couple. That's
Wow.
what one of them said, and BJP MP said, and there's actual articles out there, you can Google them yourselves, that quoted him and ran with this accusation. This is the kind of depraved state of what we're working with.
People, no, Jasveer, that reminds me, people don't know when Trudeau was in India last time, I think on the G20 summit. Apparently, the Indians actually got into his plane and made the plane to malfunction. Like somebody, because his plane was, there was a malfunction in his plane, and for 12 days, Trudeau was stuck in Canada and he could not fly out. And the Indians basically said, "Oh, we offered him our plane." Like, man, like he'll be stupid to take your plane when you are basically like the planes don't malfunction like that. And given the history of India,
I'm sure there'll be more to reveal about that, definitely.
yeah, I think there's something going to come out because the Indians are, they are the world champion in aviation terrorism. We know with the Kanishka bombing, we know their role in all the hijacks that happened. The number of hijacks that happened in India is far out more than any other country. And they were recently caught by the Australians trying to snoop on the aviation security in Australia. So, so the Indians are known expert, in aviation terrorism, and they then kind of having done this to Trudeau made the kind of plane go bad and then have him stuck for 12 days. And the defense minister of Canada at that time, I've forgotten his name, his statement came out that they were worried about Trudeau's life, all those days that he might be poisoned or something. And they were like literally worried that, okay, what's going to happen? Is Trudeau going to come out alive out of this or not? And so it's a very sad state, it's a very concerning stage that the world is. If you have this world's, people call India world's largest democracy, but the reality is that India is world's largest authoritarian regime. That's the reality. And you have world's largest authoritarian regime now colluding with the other largest authoritarian regimes, which is Russia and China, to basically take down Canada and US. And nobody should be under a false belief that this is just about sex and India. India is after liberty, justice, freedom anywhere in the world, because these regimes like India and China and Russia, they cannot allow a world where human liberties are the order of the day, and where the people are asking them questions about human rights and all. They want a world order which is driven by their sensibilities, where there is nobody asking them questions on human rights, basic human dignity, etc. So it is in their interest to collude, and they are in cahoots. They're all out, and they are sensing blood and weakness within Canada and US. But hopefully, with with one Sikh Shahidi, Sardar Hardeep Singh Nijjar, we can bring all this out, and amount of disclosures that have happened. Jasveer, are you experiencing that there is a bit more interest in Canadians and Americans to know about India? I think I'm sensing a bit of that now.
Yeah, I would say so. I think it goes along with wider concerns about maybe the overreach of government and collusion, where I guess profit is put before basic rights. Because I actually did an interview with a UK YouTube channel run by a veteran journalist, a lady called Sonia Quilton, who's done all types from different kinds, some which people would say like are conspiracy driven, maybe against the state, and she's come through it, and that actually as a very popular journalist, she's got her own channel that thousands of people watch all the time. And I did a morning show with her, and I spoke about some of the issues regarding Kurdistan the other day, and I read the comments afterwards, and a lot of people that were completely non-sick, they could relate, and they related to it in a way which was just like, look, this is again the tyranny of these governments that we see running our democracies nowadays, and there's no difference. They can relate it to other cases. I think the thing is, what I say about like the UK, for example, it's India in a suit and tie, because it presents its corruption a little bit differently. It presents its violence against its community a little bit differently, whereas India is just, presented in a different way, dressed a different way. So, yeah, there's definitely, I think, a growing interest. I think hopefully people are also leaning away from a lot of these pseudo journalists, because we have to acknowledge that some of these strange types like Daniel Boardman's, that Abdul Salam, who goes by the name Mocha now, people like that, they are clearly driven by the Indian nationalist agenda. Now, whether that's through being malicious, incompetent, or compromised, for us, it doesn't matter. The bottom line is they are, again, driven by Indian nationalist agenda, which is to target Khalistanis. They call people that have never had a criminal conviction against them terrorists, non-stop. Shaheed by Hardeep Singh Nijjar is a terrorist, he was a terrorist, he was a terrorist. They would never be able to tell you what act of terrorism he is guilty of, what he has actually done to be labeled a terrorist. They will never mention that he was actually investigated for so-called allegations about terrorism and cleared twice, that's by Canadian authorities. So they are having their own influence as well. I've sadly engaged with people that have this strange view. They talk about, all of your protests are violent. And there's actually never been a case of a violent protest that I can remember in recent memory. But they have this perception just because of the role that these pseudo-journalists play. So I would hope that would change as well with news of today.
Yeah, I think the amount of, somebody was teaching me, we were talking about misinformation and disinformation. And I learned only those two things. And the Indians are a world champion of that. It's plenty. But somebody used a term and educated me on the term. They said there's something called malinformation. Information shared with a malicious intent. And India, I think, is the world champion in spreading malinformation. And they have this vast empire. And sadly, for companies like Twitter, more than 50 to 60% of the traffic is coming from unemployed youth in India, and they get blackmailed into bowing down to the needs of the Indian government for censorship, blah blah blah. My own account is banned in India. Jasveer, I'm guessing yours is probably going to get banned very soon, if it's not as of yet. But that's what it is, and yeah, and there India is setting new standards for the world to, and many other countries have now started following the example of India, how they can blackmail Twitter and YouTube and other social media platforms, and use them as tools for spreading disinformation and malinformation. And that's also very threatening. I think that's very people shouldn't be under the impression that that tool will only be utilized against the Sikhs. It will be utilized for anything and everything under the sun. And we see that happening with the Indian nationalists now trying to co-opt the Republican Party, trying to, they've already probably co-opted the Conservatives in Canada. So that's that should be very concerning. And if the national security establishment is still sleeping, um, I believe, Jasveer, I don't know what you think, but I believe, and I know, like this much, I know that India has declared a war against six, Canada and US. So India is in no doubt. Okay, their actions are, they know what they're doing. They know their enemy. But I feel like that Americans today, or our system today, still has not identified that India is an enemy. It seems they are still deluded enough to think of India as a potential ally at some point in time. What do you? Isn't that a fatal mistake in the current environment of geopolitical tensions?
That's a fantastic question. I would love to discuss that question with, I guess no MP would ever give you a good answer to that, but maybe some of the geopolitical analysts would be able to answer that. I would say, from my position, we know that trade always comes first. I'm seeing a lot of information come out recently as well, which examines the levels of India's trade. What was it? An article just like today or yesterday about India's supply or trade with Russia and the technology, something along those lines. I can double check. But either way, this is something that's been greatly noted. I would say what it is they want that to continue, but I think they want the brazenness of the regime to change. They want the regime to become a bit more timid, a bit more like the stereotypical Indian, which I think is going to upset some of the more fiery Indian nationalists. I would say that's what the West will be looking for. Just an India that would like to revert to being the smaller partner, the junior partner, despite the magnitude of their own economy and their own capabilities as well. As I've talked about before, the power of the Indian lobby is one of the most powerful lobbying movements in the world. India has very prominent and vocal businessmen, political figures all over the world, in every diaspora, all in media, all different types of circles. So there's never going to be a permanent break off from engagement with the West or relationship with the West in any way. I think this is just going to be a changing of dominance. And, let's just be real as well. There's the great possibility that within this belief that India needs the power dynamic needs to change between India and the West, they might believe India would be best served as maybe 2 or 3 countries. So maybe Khalistan is in the pipeline, it is in the eyesight, because they think that India would work better with a bit of devolution. So.
Oh yeah, no, I was actually sharing. Not sure if you saw that I shared a political map. Like, what are the right natural boundaries for the subcontinent? Because India is not a country; it's not a nation. It's like, I know, like, who is that famous leader from Singapore, Hugh Con Lee or something? He used to call India as much a country as the equator is a nation. Like, so it's like.
That's attributed to Winston Churchill.
Oh, that's a Winston Churchill, right? Yeah. So Lee Kuan Lee's thing is like India is basically not a nation. It's a string of something which is strewn around the British Railways line. That is how like something like that. So that's true. Like there's no culture called Indian. There is no food called Indian. There is no cuisine called Indian. There is no language called Indian. You have Punjabi culture, Punjabi cuisine, Punjabi language, Bengali culture, Bengali cuisine, Bengali language, Sindhi, Tamilians, and there are these different nations which are imprisoned in this colonial prison called India and Pakistan. And probably, the world is today, facing dire consequences of the not actually decolonizing the subcontinent and leaving it in this unnatural state with power, absolute power in the hands of a casteist elite, which for 1,000 years has not, shied away from butchering and suppressing its own brothers and sisters. Moment they have world some semblance of power, in world, what are they going to do to rest of the countries? Only God can, foresee that calamity, and we are now seeing that happen. And I hope if so to that, like I was sharing, like what are the right natural nations and boundaries, and I kind of made a map of India, and like what are the probably like probably 10 to 13 countries is the right balance, and India and Pakistan both, which are the natural boundaries. And if that happens, Jasveer, I can tell you, India will overnight, the countries will progress like European Union. You will see end to strife. You will see end to all these conflicts. You will see end to poverty, misery, because these states will then compete with each other on like real matters, on like giving. They will start then worrying about their people on the ground. Right now, it is all about these fake nationalistic reasons. Okay, Hindus are their enemy because there is no all the issues are being made these fake national issues to win elections, while reality the issues should be the real issues should be employment, which are the local issues, the roads and the electricity and whatnot. And if India goes, and I have no doubts that is the natural state it has to revert to, then India will progress economically. India will become, the subcontinent will become Western friendly, liberty friendly. These nations will be able to self govern and express their nationality, and then we can, the markets will open up, and India will then achieve its true potential. But there's somebody has to bell this cat, this Frankenstein monster that was got created by British. I think this is what I call proverbial white man's burden. I think it's their burden to now help kind of undo this colonial empire. Yeah, while we are talking, we have Amik Singh. He's first time joined. Amik, sorry, I saw your hand late, man. Go ahead. Please introduce a bit about yourself and then anything you want to ask.
Hi guys, thank you so much for hosting the space. It's amazing that we're all talking about it and discussing everything that's happening right now. Just to add a little bit of context of like what I wanted to share, I just came across a Global News article and I shared it with you as well. You can post it up. That AP Tillo's house was also part of this whole thing as well, when it got attacked by some people. They were linked to actually the same gangs that the Indian government used to carry out, criminal activity here in Canada. So, which was very, very like interesting to see that the depths of how far they can go, Yeah, it was just mind-boggling, and just even before the reaction came, as like sun's rising in India, you could tell the media response of what was happening, other than what some of pseudo journalists are going and giving a quasi narrative of what's happening in the the diplomatic world. It's just very interesting to see that India didn't have a response, and all they could kind of rally back to was like the same sort of narrative that they've been trying to push since like the early 2000s. It's like, oh, there's people that support Khalistan, there are people that support Khalistan, and Khalistan is an insurgency, and that narrative being put forward in 2024 just makes you like scratch your head and go, why is this the response that they have when they're clearly been told by different diplomatic agencies, different like criminal investigation agencies all across the world, like, hey, this is not okay. You're working in the same light of, for example, China and what Pakistan's doing as well, and other like Russia. Like this is the ilk of a nation that the India is heading towards in terms of like how they operate on a global scale. So I just wanted to kind of share those thoughts. Everyone get your take on it, and everyone else takes on it as like singers, and it just makes you think of like what happened to Sidhu. It just kind of made my head go in that space.
Yeah.
Like all of this is coming out. Like nobody's ever gonna talk about it, but it's just unfortunate he was in India at that time. For what it's worth, if he was in Canada, maybe things would have turned out differently. But it just makes you like just think about like how the government is operating and the way they've kind of just warped their way of conduct on the world stage. That's all. Just wanted to share that.
Yeah. No, Amik, I highly recommend you read a book called Open Secrets. It was written by the deputy second highest, in command person from Indian Intelligence Bureau, India's domestic spy agency. And yeah, so this is atrocious. This is extraordinary the way the Indian agencies kind of kill people around the world. And but it's not news for people like me. What is surprising, honestly, to me, what is more surprising is the naivety of our national security establishment. Um, they seem to think that India is some kind of a democracy, and we have brainwashed our narrative. We have allowed ourselves to be brainwashed with through media and academia by calling India a democracy. While if you just look at pure facts and objectively, you can only have to say that India is the world's largest authoritarian regime. It has no semblance of human rights, basic human dignity for citizens. And probably you don't know. I'm not sure. Because I was born in India and born in Punjab, but like occupied by India, and I lived there till 33 years of my life. To give you a sense, India has a law, or it's called UAPA, in which a public servant can put anybody behind the bar if he thinks that person is doing anything which is against good moral law and order. It's not defined what good morality and law means. There's no like even sequence, but it's just like up to him. And he can keep you in jail for 2 years without even telling you what your fault is, what your charge is against you. 2 years, okay? Without taking you to a court, without presenting you in front of a judge. So 2 years you can be kept in prison just by any public official. If he thinks he doesn't even like your face, he can just put you there. And he can, if once he tells you the charge, okay, if he tells you the charge, then the onus is on the accused to prove that he is not guilty. The onus is not on the state to prove that you are guilty. The onus is on the accused to prove that they are innocent. This reversal of burden of proof is nowhere in the world, not even in Russia, not even in North Korea. Like there also, if the state is charging you, they will have some way to kind of prove this is what we found. But in India, it's the reverse. And that kind of a country is labeled as a democracy. I think like there is something terribly wrong with our system. I think as a society, probably America and Canada, we have to really rethink, like, can we be fooled so easily? Are we now, have we now started believing our own lies because they are convenient? And like there's this journalist who basically said, oh, it's good news, at least Trudeau will go. If India is just unhappy with Trudeau will go. And next election, that was his reaction. I'm like, man, his name is Christopher Clay. I'm like, do you know, Mr. Clay, that you are joking about it? Okay, the good news is that Trudeau won't be in the election and the relations will be back to normal. But you are assuming that that list today only has surnames as Singh. What if that list tomorrow it is going to have your surname, your kid's surname tomorrow if you don't today fight for Canadian sovereignty? Is that okay with you? Like, are you so short-sighted? Are you so brainless, so brain dead to realize what's going on and the implications of letting India get away with it? Oh man, this it just surprises me. It surprises me when like educated folks, like so-called think tanks, and like big media shots, they look at it like a diplomatic row. It's not a diplomatic row. It's a country is taking hostile actions against you, and you can't see it what it is for what it is. You just can't see for it for what it actually is. It's just amazing, like, and kind of worries me honestly to a certain degree. Yeah, Rajveer, go ahead.
Thank you, Ajit bhai. I have a question for Amir Singh. I know he's known to what do we call Jagmeet Singh. And I have a question like, is there any way we can check on Arya status in Canada, like through Jagmeet Singh if he pressurized Trudeau to check on his MP, Liberal?
Yeah. So this is my take, okay, Rajveer. I think the politicians need to step aside right now. Like the politician Trudeau has done his job. I think the onus is on the National Security Establishment of Canada. And when I say National Security Establishment, I mean the CSIS, the RCMP, there are other intelligence agencies within Canada, their defense chief. Like, are you guys gonna sit back like kids? Like, are you gonna sit back and watch an Indian agent come become a member of parliament, work against Canadian interest in favor of this foreign government? Not only him, we have like this. It's not even an open. It's not even like everybody knows where his loyalty is. Is that a question? Like if somebody's saying, "Oh no, it's that's questionable," then I just like you are basically living under a rock. Then there are so many Canadian journalists who got exposed, who are basically on the payrolls of India. There are so many Canadian and American academicians, journalists, politicians. They are on the payrolls of India. India is conducting hostile operations against US and Canada. India hates Canadian and American systems and concepts of liberty, justice, human rights, and it is openly, it is secretly, but openly in arms with China. It wants to take down the system, it wants a different world order. Are we just going to sit and watch all this happen? Or are we going to really get together? Is it not the responsibility of the Chief of Army Staff in Canada, the CC's chief, the RCMP chief, all these intelligence bureau chiefs, to talk and get Trudeau, get all the politicians into a room and say, guys, we need to declare a state of war against India. We don't have to announce it, and all our actions against India should be driven with a strategy on how we can take down India. Because if you don't take down the Indian state, the Indian state has decided it's going to take down Canada and America. So let's put about Canada. Canada is a small country. Why is the US not doing it? Why are they? What are these like? Are we just supposed to sit there while these underpaid and overworked bureaucrats just get their retirement pensions? What is the CIA chief doing? What is the Homeland Security chief doing? They know this is the world's biggest authoritarian regime with 6 million nationalists now in the bloodstream of America, which can control the election of every senator, every president. Is kind of openly hostile. Their intentions are to take down America. Are we going to just sit and watch? Like, or are we going to really take down India? You have no option but to go and fight the real problem, which is the Indian state. You have to dismantle the Indian state. If you don't dismantle the Indian state, they are going to dismantle you. It's as simple, clear to even like this is common sense. And but I think they've been deluded. Like I keep hearing this Indo-Pacific strategy. What the hell is Indo-Pacific strategy? Is Indo-Pacific strategy allowing India more time to undermine US? Do you think like anybody in their sane mind who thinks that India is going to ally with US against China, like really has not even had basic education? Indian state, India's society, the casteist elite is Indian state. They admire China. They love Russia. They love that authoritarian system, that communist system. That is the system they want for their own people and own country. They actually send delegates, member of parliaments to China to study the Chinese system and how we can implement that in India. Okay, have you ever had a member of parliaments from India come to US to understand how to bring justice and liberty back to people of India? Never. It will never happen because they don't want it. So I'm amazed. Like I'm like the common sense is not common for sure. It's just and it's maybe because I have had the benefit of having grown up in India, and I have seen what the Indian state is. I totally understand it. I understand the society, and maybe like if you are in West, and especially if you are white, you basically don't even understand what the Indian society is, and you overlook the danger. Sorry, I go on a rant when when I talk about like how dumb our national security is.
Just answer that question. Just to follow up, I think the best thing that could be done is, working with that individual riding, and talking to people and saying like, hey, this is your member-elect for parliament, whoever that case may be, and just discuss as much as you can with different parties and raise a candidate, or even somebody from the Liberal Party could possibly even go to the riding association and be like, this is something that needs to be addressed. I don't think this individual cares about Canada. It shouldn't be somebody that's an elected official, and we have other candidates that could possibly play a much stronger role in protecting Canadian sovereignty and interests of Canada and Canadians. I think that's something that could be done for any riding for that matter. So just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah. One of the things, Amik, that's correct. I think the people, the Canadians, need to like really understand they're in the state of war, and with India, and they need to start doing something. Like we need to kind of put our petty differences aside right now. The Canadian society, the American society is divided, but now in that mix, we have these foreign players whose interest is to deepen those divisions and take advantage, and they're doing it through agents which have been now embedded in our system, our societies, whose only job is to further divide the society and to kind of violate the sovereignty of Canada and US. But having said that, I was about to ask you a question. It kind of slipped my mind. It'll come back. But anyways, Quiet Rebellious, you guys have anything to add?
I just wanted to say that the NDP statement by Jagmeet Singh was fantastic. Did anyone else have any thoughts about that? I mean, I thought it was a very strong statement when it comes to sort of addressing these things, and particularly calling out the RSS as well. We were in a space, a lot of us earlier, and I think some Canadians were asking what the RSS is. So it's a good time to kind of discuss the Hindutva lobby as well, particularly in light of the Sacramento Bee article. I mean, that was phenomenal. That was just last week that came out. So on the back of that, we had the Sacramento Bee article, which basically revealed how the Hindutva lobby is trying to push very the narrative that Gurdwaras and just Sikh organisation and leaders are extremist terrorists, basically, and have drug rings and linked to gangs. And meanwhile, there's this meeting happening, with high officials like Raw, and which is showing this completely, revealing the intricacies of, with evidence of what India is doing in Canada in their embassies. So the first, I suppose, notice that the Indian government issued, like that was quite interesting too, like the Indian ministry before this whole news came out, and they essentially called every Sikh MP a extremist terrorist. So not just obviously, those which are part of the cabinet of the government, but they also talked about, I suppose, Jagmeet Singh as well in that too, the way that they had worded. They didn't say his name, but they said, another party, which is, So that was that needed to be addressed, but then this all came out as well. So that was there's a lot. And then in the Washington Post article, which gave us just more sort of context and information. So there's a lot to unpack, and I think Jazza Jenna said, we've got to ensure that a lot of this stuff doesn't sort of just get pushed to the side, because it's damning. Like, it's extraordinary and it's damning, and everything needs to be highlighted and just spoken about just a lot more, I think, strongly.
I think to add to your point, Coin, one thing that I have noticed in like the media landscape now in Canada is I think Canadians are at least with the efforts of like what has happened since 2015 and the initial visits to Canadian diplomats or elected officials going to India and the sort of wave of disinformation and misinformation that the Canadian media landscape initially picked up. And the community here pushed back, big shout out to WSO for headlining and moving that as much as they could. Now it's coming to a point now, where the usual talking heads, your Joel Assanges and your Jay Maliskis, they don't even get airtime on Canadian media. And even if they do, I saw one interview today of Assange on CBC, and it was the old stock white Canadian guy asking Assange of the question of like why is it an issue if people are talking about Khalistan and talking about a referendum? How is using bullets to address words appropriate for a nation state? And Assange had to admit that no, that's completely wrong. We shouldn't support that. And he's the usual talking head that would chime out the same narrative or propaganda that the Indian state would be putting out. But it's very interesting to see that a lot of Canadians, and I think worldwide, there's an understanding of what transnationalism looks like, and there's a much better understanding of it, at least on a bureaucratic level. People that are in police, that are in intelligence, they have an understanding how it is ruining democracy and undermining democracy a whole lot. But the only sort of missing link is that doesn't trickle down to like election issues. And America is going through their election cycle right now. I think Canada will be following suit not long after. That's the missing piece that I feel like a lot of people, when it comes to engaging with this, people that are already involved or feel like their communities sidelined or put in the forefront by misinformation, disinformation, or transnationalism, is aware of it, but majority of people aren't and don't see this asymmetrical warfare as a sign of like, oh, this is a decay of our sovereignty, and that's something that we need to talk more about and kind of discuss.
Yeah, and that's where it is so
excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I think that's so. Just really quickly, Sono just had his hand up as well. No, I think that underpins so much of what we do on social media, what we've observed, and I was really, really pleased. I know Press Progress have started reporting, Major Gaurav Arya and Luke Lebrun just put a fantastic thread talking about Claypool and Boardman, and with clips of them featured on Indian media and how they're being sort of pushed as these experts. And these are guys that live in their basements of their mothers or something, right? And how the prime time Indian media is showcasing, which are essentially, propagandists, and which is fantastic evidence for, law officials in Canada. And again, I think it does sort of tie in beautifully with this whole, even in America, the Russian disinformation network. But now I think India might even trump that, because you also have this very violent element to it, which it uses its disinformation network, where there are killings and arson, etc. So I think you're right. I think if we can talk about it in that element, it would really make it more relevant for a lot more people.
Yeah, it's kind of, I think the point, Mick, you raise that it doesn't trickle down to election issue is where I think the crux is, because India knows that this probably will never become an election issue. And but the India has influence on the election issues. For example, India now controls, like through this nationalistic brainwashing and this Hindu nationalism. The Indian government has basically made the Indian nationalistic diaspora a vote bank that they can sway in any direction they want to. There was this Howdy Modi event which happened, if you remember, when Trump in 2016 elections, wherein Modi came to Texas, and in one big, stadium, he had 50,000 Indian Americans waving Indian flags, and he was basically tapping Trump and telling him, "Look, I can make you win the elections." And that's very true. If you look at the margin of difference in votes between the two presidential candidates, is hardly anything. It's like a couple of 100,000 votes. And if you just look at the Indian diaspora, it's roughly around 6 million, and even if half of them is nationalistic, you can basically make any candidate, win the election. And the same is true with the seat of all the senators in the states where the swing vote is critical. And so, to me, I don't know how America comes out of this problem. I don't see it like short of, like a big. I don't see from, and I'm a like I'm I'm an ex Air Force, so my mind works more from a military point of view. Okay, I'm not a politician. I could be, claim to learn to have a bit of military strategist. To me, it's a national security issue, and if it is to be tackled as a national security issue, the only way America can safeguard itself is by dismantling the Indian state. I don't see any other way. Like, what is the other way? Yeah, go ahead, Amik.
I think the word I'm looking for, and this kind of came to me, is like bipartisanship. I think if both political sides, Democrats and Republicans, come out and say, like, this is something that we don't want to stand for. But unfortunately, I think what's happening, and I think Canada, for a much larger extent, and other countries as well, is, there's little small dog whistles that are sent in the community. I forget the guy's name, but there's somebody that's, I think, campaigning for Trump to see if he's elected. He's asking to be, like, leading the CIA to go after, like, the political opponents of Trump, something to that effect. I wish I had the article on hand, but I was reading something along those lines, and it just kind of undermines the whole idea of, like, why national security and why, like, the security apparatus is apolitical, and why this is more damning today is because, the RCMP came out and they don't have any political allegiances to anybody, right? And nor should they. They did their own investigation and came to their conclusion with their own primary information that they collected. So if a security agency is coming out and saying this, hopefully other security agencies realize, like, wait a minute, is this going to happen here? Is this already happening here if it's not something that's on their radar? Which opens up a wider conversation for what is, like, nationalism in a post globalized world. I think that's the bigger, larger question of, like, what is nationalism in a post immigration world where people are having allegiances culturally to one ideology. For example, it may have a different understanding or presentation of how that is in their day-to-day life and what they claim allegiance to. But there's certain dog whistles that I hear in political campaigns a lot of the time, which I may be privy to, but the larger public may not be. And to your Howdy Modi event nod, that is a huge, like, symbolic gesture of, like, we can sway the vote in one direction or the other. So it's kind of interesting to see, because that is what the Indian state is, at least that's what the quasi-journalists are accusing Trudeau of at this time, is saying, he has a vote bank politics and he's trying to cozy favor with the Sikh community. If only if politics was in Canada was that easy, and if Sikhs had that much influence, I'm sure other outcomes in our electoral process would have been much different. But that's more to say to the effect of a lot of what is happening now. It would be very interesting to see how India reacts to this. If they go down to the route of what they did in previous, we didn't do this, but now that it's actual evidence placed, and no Indian media house so far has denied the fact that these allegations have been proved true. They're focusing more so of like, what is the Indian government response to this evidence presented initially, where those same allegations in 2015 and 16, in 2018 and so on and so forth, looked at, this is complete alleged disinformation, they pretty much say, at least what I've come to realize, they pretty much say what they're doing in actuality as to what the other parts of the world are doing to them. It boggles my mind, but they kind of play their head and say like, yeah, this is actually disinformation, but that's exactly what
you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just very, very interesting to see like what their actual response would be now going forward.
No, but Amik, I can tell you right now, what's actually going on. I think because as I said, like I look at things from a military standpoint, right? So from a strategy standpoint, I don't see it as a conflict of India with Sikhs. Okay, India always had a conflict with Sikhs. India and the reason why India had a conflict with Sikhs was because the Sikhi comes with basic values of freedom of religion, freedom of speech and morality, which the Indian state is basically, totally against. The Indian state, the only morality it believes in is the unity and territorial integrity of India, and every other stuff, has kind of become subservient to it. So in that context, like where you have to worship the state, Sikhi cannot, you can either have Sikhi or you can have the Indian state. So that conflict is there. Now, to look at this whole thing that is going on, like, okay, what is India going to do? India will probably come out of this. Let us say this whole controversy is somehow handled, okay, and somehow it is put behind. But that doesn't solve anything, because at the heart of this controversy is something else. Because you have to understand why India became so emboldened to run death squads, why India became so emboldened that even after it was caught, it basically said, we are going to nuke Canada. It basically, said, we don't care. They celebrated the murders of Canadians on their national television. They, even to an extent, they went to, actually have death squads on the American soil. Which other country can dare to do that? Can Russians dare to run death squads on American soil? No. Can Chinese can do some bit, but to the extent that Indians are going, even they will not dare not do that. Now, why Indians are able to do that is because I think I see it in the larger geopolitical struggle that's going on. What has happened is that the Indian state has gained a bare minimum level of resources. So India is poor. Indian people are poor, but the Indian state is very rich. The Indian state gathers all their resources through taxation and whatnot, and it has immense power. The amount of power that a small deputy collector of India has, an IAS officer, I can tell you that amount of power even Joe Biden does not have within the territories of US. That's the amount, absolute power that you give to a DC in India. And if you don't believe me, I can tell you the type of laws that they have there. Now, imagine all the centralized power over 1.5 billion people and the resources is given to 4 or 5 people on the top, in which the prime minister, the head of cabinet, is sitting. So that man is like the most powerful man in the world are the people who are the head of these authoritarian regimes like India, China, and Russia. It is not Joe Biden. Joe Biden has to take care of 1,000 things before he has a powerful military, but is he himself powerful in the sense that he can do what he wants? No. And so now these authoritarian regimes in this geopolitical world where the American power has waned and where there are deep divisions within America, and America is seeing China's economic rise, and China is the preeminent economic power today. Like America is not as powerful economically as China. That is should be amply clear. Militarily, we are powerful. Economically, China is ahead of us now. Now, with China's rise, China is authoritarian regime. All these authoritarian regimes are now saying, why do we need this world order, which was basically set by the Western countries, which today is run primarily by US along with its Western allies, and they dislike this world order. They want a different world order in which these authoritarian regimes are the ones setting the rules and the standards and blah 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 and whatnot. So all the naturally, India has cut a secret deal with China and Russia, and probably Iran is included in that, and Pakistan is part of that, and they are basically now working overtime to undermine the American hegemony and kind of the American ability to set the world order. So they want a new world order. Now it is part of that play that India is now exercising its muscle, and India is totally telling Canada its place, and very soon it's going to tell US its place. That is the larger struggle in which the geopolitical struggle, or you can call it clash of values. Because what is the clash? The clash is, if America was like Russia and India, we will all be one happy family. America will be murdering its own citizens like India does, like China does. Then there is no conflict because the values match. At the end of the day, this is a clash of values. There are people who believe in freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the Western democracies. There are Sikhs who believe in that, and they are in conflict with the people who don't, the people who want authoritarian systems and regimes to prevail. So it's a fight between, at the end of the day, good and evil. And Punjabi ਚ ਆਪਾਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਨਾ ਧਰਮ ਦੀ ਹੀ ਲੜਾਈ ਹੈ. It's a fight of righteousness, and this fight is getting played out right in front of our eyes. It's not just killing of one individual. There's a larger geopolitical struggle behind all this. This is the way I see it.
So the name is Kash Patel that Avik Singh talks about. He's gonna be the who's gonna run the CIA as Trump wins. It's Gujarati. Put the post on the top. You can check it.
Akash Patel.
Kash, Kash Patel.
Kash Patel. Okay, so what's his background, Kash Patel?
Yeah, thank you for that reminder. I think it was so it was a New York Times article I was reading.
Yeah, I'll put it on the top.
Thank you.
It's the second one.
Yeah. Apparently, he doesn't have any foreign espionage expertise. He just is politically aligned with Trump, and Indian style politics, if you will. Like, I will serve under you, and just make sure all your political rivals are taken care of. It just blows my mind to kind of just read the stuff out loud and see how the way of governing in feudal India is kind of coming to light in 2024 in like a bizarre world, but that's essentially what's happening.
Yeah, no, he did manage to get some post in the previous Trump presidency. He was a US National Security Council official. He was a senior advisor to the acting director of national intelligence and chief of staff to the acting United States Secretary of Defense during the Trump presidency. Okay. And then, okay, so he has definitely gained some credentials to weigh for that, the top post, and he's very young, only 44 years old, and great, yeah. So this is this is like the danger. The fact is that many of the Indian nationalists, like nothing against Patel, okay, Cash, like I just want to be clear on that, but the fact is, we know for true that, and this is what a person American born in America who is not from from the subcontinent can never understand that many of these people, the upper caste, the casteist elite of India, the casteist Hindu elite of India, they love the idea of a caste based society. And in their mind, Hinduism is this old civilization which should rule on the entire world. And they have this strange notions, and their loyalty will always be with the Indian flag. So if you have like 3 4 million of such people within your system holding such powerful positions, who actually inside in their heart they hate you, they hate the American system, and they love the Indian civilization and whatever it can bring, like varnashram and caste system, then we have a problem at our hand. Like we are getting like sabotaged from within. So yeah, so I don't know, like like how to handle this very very tough thing. Like I know it sounds a bit kind of politically non-correct, and the and that's where this becomes more dangerous, because politicians can't talk about it because they have vote banks, like they have to attract votes, like they're going to lose the Indian American vote tomorrow. And so how do they talk about it? So if the politicians are never going to talk about it, and this has to become a bipartisan issue, as Amik pointed out, I feel like somebody has to. It seems like all of the people are watching each other's faces, knowing what's going on. But now the politicians have to become a bipartisan issue. But why would politicians make it a bipartisan issue? Somebody has to bell this cat. Maybe these unelected, intelligence agencies, army chiefs, they get the politicians into a room, and they basically say, guys, we need to kind of, we need to talk about this. Like we need to kind of, like we need to find a solution. You guys can't fight over with each other on these issues. And India is an enemy, and we have to tackle India accordingly. I only see that, and I don't know when that's going to happen. Maybe when it happens, when it might be just too late by the time they realize that they have to do this. It's sad, but it is what it is. Okay, with that having been said, Jasveer, any final comments? Coin Rebellious, any final comments? I would love to wrap up. I have another day. I know all of us have another day to handle tomorrow, but yeah.
I would just say this has to force a reconstruction of India's presence in any other countries now that we know the diplomats are involved, and they are basically not being accountable for that either. So they're going to run away scrambling and stumbling. On top of that, let's remember this is something that within the Sikh community we should all raise with our political representatives, because this is on our doorstep, so it affects all of us. This is something that we expect all major parties in the West to address. Yeah, as simple as that. We've got the US election coming up, other elections as well pending. Canada's one next year. Let's make sure that this stays prominent in our thoughts. Beyond that, Banji mentioned the SACB article. I think it's important for us to remember as well that this isn't just like random organizations under Hindu banners doing their own thing. This is just normal behavior across the globe when it comes to I'll just call it the Indian lobby targeting the Sikh community. In the UK, it's very well known, Lord Rami Ranger, he's a member of the House of Lords who bought his way in. He is a fanatical accuser of anyone and everyone of being a so-called Sikh extremist, and he goes out of his way to, or he used to, at least before he had some very serious legal issues in the last couple of years, he used to publicly raise this about all types of people. He actually, on Twitter, he threatened one Sevadar with saying he was going to get beaten up in India. He literally shared an India of somebody getting beaten up and said, you will get the same treatment when you come to India. In Australia, don't forget, there was a petition not long ago, a very crudely started petition.
Yeah, for some reason, Jasveer, your voice got cut off. Coin, can you hear Jasveer?
No, he might have got a call.
Oh, yeah, seems like that.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Jasveer, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, just to finish off then, just keep in mind that all of these types of people that I'm mentioning and all of these movements are guilty of the same things that they're talking about today. They're talking about extortion, coercion, manipulation, all of that. And of course, all of that is punctuated by violence, which is targeting the community. So keep that in mind. This things we should be noting and raising within the community. All right, guys. Thanks for your space again, Harjeet. Well done. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, no, we have the Pinder coming in. We might be staying back a bit more. Like the Pinder Bhaji, ki haal chal hai? We've seen you after a very long period of time. Hope the Indian government has not, put you behind bars or something. I hope everything okay. Because in India, it's very dangerous to be a guy with common sense and the ability to call the right thing right. It's a very dangerous thing in India.
Because wasn't there an assassination of a Sikh activist in Punjab just this week as well, linked to Deep Sidhu?
Coin, it's not just that. There are a couple of other assassinations. Okay, Moosewala, Deep Sidhu, then Preet Sani. Nobody talks about him, but it was a clear kid.
Thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah, and where is this other? This another guy who just got murdered. And he got like some threats from again that Lawrence Bishnoi people, and then eventually he was gunned down. So it's kind of very sad. And the Pinder Bhaji is here. He's I think in Punjab, and I kind of worry about people like him. They come and sometimes speak their mind, and I'm like, man, like you have to be careful with the way this terrible Indian regime is. But just to your point, like I am a student of history, and I took a sabbatical 2 years back, and I read a lot of history, especially from the pre-British period and what happened in the partition time. Like this is my understanding. Like it seems like we Sikhs are destined to save people, okay, and communities. So in 1857 the British would have been wiped out of the continent and with massacred, and the genocide would have happened, and their ladies were being mass raped in the streets of Delhi. If Sikhs had not helped, again the casteist Thakurs and Muslims of India would have established the Mughal rule again by wiping out the British. It was in 1857 that the Sikhs helped the British kind of save their lives, and then till 1947 Sikhs were at the forefront of help bring some peace prosperity to that subcontinent in partnership with the British, and they helped again save the asses of the free world in the First World War. The amount of sacrifices that Sikhs and Punjabis did in First World War, people don't know. Again in Second World War, was it not for the Sikh element and the Punjabi element, the war would have been lost, and we had nothing to do, but we just saved them. And it was a volunteer army. Imagine, it was not even an army, which it was people volunteered to save the British and the free world at that point in time. And but then when the British basically left, the ones they betrayed were the Sikhs, because there's a very nice book called The Betrayal of the Sikhs, written by Sir Landon. I've forgotten his surname. When he wrote, when the British basically did a deal with the Muslim League and the Hindu Congress, and basically divided India into Hindu India and Islamic Pakistan, and left the Sikhs for fend for themselves. So there was that big betrayal. That's fine. Then again in 1991 there was another betrayal of the Sikhs, when when there was a moment, an opportunity for United States to break Indian state after the post-Soviet period and basically bring lasting peace to the world. But they did not. They again fell for the temptation of, it is so easy to talk to one government and one person in India than allow these nations to be free. So India was given another lifeline in 1991, and it was again kind of a betrayal. Like there was sympathy and support for Sikh militants and Sikh insurgents pre 91, but the moment the Soviet Union wilted, America kind of looked the other way, and there was a second betrayal of the Sikhs. And today, what I am seeing, the way I see from my vantage point is today Canada and America is under threat. These, people whom they have allowed to persist and to whom they have handed over the keys of the power in subcontinent, now they are no longer satisfied with just suppressing Indians. Now they are out for world domination, in partnership with the Chinese and the Russians, and they are sitting inside US and Canada. And even today, the people who are really bringing it to the fore, the danger that what's going on, is actually the Sikhs. Even today, like, it's our guy who gets Shahidi, and now we are talking about India. When would have the Washington Post written such an article about India and understanding India? Now people are paying attention. Who is India? What is India? And look at you, look at people like Coin, look at Rebellious. We are spending our time. We have nothing to gain here. We are just doing it out of our patriotic duty. That, guys, whatever we have in US, Canada is very special. It's not perfect, but but it's what we have to, in terms of liberty, what is left over in this world. And India and China and Russia is out for it, and we are trying to kind of raise awareness. So it seems, like sometimes I feel it's kind of, the onus is on Sikhs always. And it is high time, like that Sikhs also, I think out of this, I'm very hopeful that as the Indian state gets exposed, the good guys across the world will join hands in kind of defeating this evil, and will hopefully, decolonize the subcontinent as well. With that said, Deepinder Paji is here. Deepinder Paji, ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਮੇਰੀ ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਆ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ? It's been long time. You should please share some thoughts.
ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਜੀ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ।
ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ।
ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਆ ਰਹੀ ਸੀ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ, ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਥੋੜਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ ਆ ਰਹੀ ਸੀ। ਆਨੇ ਬੱਤੇ ਡਿਸਕਨੈਕਟ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਮਾਈਕ। ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਸਾਰੇ ਹੀ ਬੰਦਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਥੇ। I believe it's a very astonishing news. ਮੈਂ ਵਾਸ਼ਿੰਗਟਨ ਪੋਸਟ ਦਾ ਉਹਨੇ ਆਰਟੀਕਲ ਪੜ੍ਹ ਕੇ ਗਿਆ ਤੇ the revelations are quite serious, ਮਤਲਬ ਜੋ ਵੀ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਇਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ। ਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਕਿ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸ਼ਿਕਾਰ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਪੈਣੀ। ਸ਼ਿਕਾਰੀ ਆਪ ਹੀ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਨੂੰ ਨਕਲ ਕਰੀ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਉਹਦੀ ਕਰਕੇ। ਉਹ ਕਈ ਵਾਰੀ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਸਟ੍ਰੈਟਜੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਕਈ ਵਾਰੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦਾਣੇ ਪਾਈ ਜਾਓ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਇੰਨਾ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਲਾਲਚ ਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਆਪ ਹੀ ਜਾਲ ਚਾ ਕੇ ਬਹਿ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਤੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਪੈਰ ਫਸ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਨੇ। ਫਿਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਦਾ ਵੇਖੀ ਵੀ ਜਾਓ ਨਾ, ਤੇ ਉਹਦੀਆਂ ਅੱਖਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਸ਼ਰਮ ਤੇ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੁਨਾਹ ਭਰੀ ਅੱਖਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਦੋਂ ਉਹ ਬੈਠਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਨਾ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇੰਜੋਏ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ। ਸੋ ਰੈਦਰ ਦੈਨ ਯੂ ਸੇਇੰਗ ਦੈਟ ਵੀ ਇਹਨੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਮਾਰਨਾ ਸੀ ਜਾਂ ਇਹਨੇ ਸਾਡਾ ਕੰਮ ਖਰਾਬ ਕਰਨਾ ਸੀ ਜਾਂ ਜੋ ਵੀ ਆ, ਇਨ ਲਾਰਜਰ ਸਟ੍ਰੈਟਜੀ ਯੂ ਬੇਸਿਕਲੀ rather than saying the actions basically speak for you. So ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਉਹਦੇ ਵੱਲ ਅਸੀਂ ਵੱਧ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ। ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿਸੇ ਦੀ ਵਡਿਆਈ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾ ਸਕਦੀ। ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਗੁਰੂ ਆਪ ਕਰਾ ਰਿਹਾ। ਸੋ ਉਹ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਕੁਛ ਉਹਦੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਪਲਾਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੁਛ ਉਹਦੀ ਸੋਚ ਕੁਛ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਦੀ। ਸੋ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਕਿ ਸਿੱਖ ਉਹਦੇ ਵੱਲ ਵਧਣਗੇ ਔਰ ਚੰਗੀ ਸੋਚ ਰੱਖਣਗੇ ਔਰ ਗੁਰੂ ਵੱਲ ਭਰੋਸਾ ਰੱਖਣਗੇ। ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਹੈ ਗੁਰੂ ਵੱਲ ਭਰੋਸਾ ਰੱਖਣਾ। ਜੇ ਉਹ ਹੈਗਾ ਤਾਂ ਸਭ ਕੁਛ ਹੀ ਹੋਏਗਾ, ਸਭ ਕੁਛ ਹੋਏਗਾ।
ਸਿੰਘੋ 7 ਵਚਨ ਨੇ, 7 ਵਚਨ। ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਇਆ ਕਰੋ, DM ਵੀ ਕਰੋ ਮੈਨੂੰ, ਹਨਾ। ਤੇ ਤਾਂ ਹੀ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਯਾਦ ਆ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ 1-2 ਗੱਲਾਂ ਹੋਈਆਂ ਸੀ ਤੇ ਭੁੱਲਦੀਆਂ ਨਹੀਂ। ਜਦੋਂ ਗੁਰਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਨਾ, ਤੇ ਸਿੰਘਾਂ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ 'ਚ ਸੱਚ ਹੀ ਅੱਡ ਹੁੰਦਾ। ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਥੋੜਾ ਬਹੁਤਾ ਆਪਾਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਲੋੜ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸੁਲਝੇ ਹੋਏ ਕੌਮ 'ਚ, ਜਿਹਨੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਖੁਸ਼ਕਿਸਮਤ ਜੋ ਬੰਦੇ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਥੋੜਾ ਬਹੁਤਾ ਚਲੋ ਬਾਹਰ ਨਿਕਲਣ ਦਾ ਮੌਕਾ ਮਿਲਿਆ ਜਾਂ ਪੜ੍ਹਨ ਦਾ ਮੌਕਾ ਮਿਲਿਆ। ਤੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਅਲੀਟ ਵਰਗ, ਤਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਅਲੀਟ ਲਫ਼ਜ਼ ਸਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ, ਬਟ ਕਹਿ ਲਓ ਕਿ ਵੀ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਹਰ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਨੂੰ ਇਕੱਠਾ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਹੁਣ ਸ਼ੁਰੂਆਤ ਕਰ ਦੇਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ ਆਪਣੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ, ਛੋਟੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਪੱਧਰ ਤੇ। ਬਾਕੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਗੱਲ ਸਹੀ ਹੈ, ਜੋ ਕਰਨ ਕਰਾਉਣ ਵਾਲਾ ਦਪਿੰਦਰ ਭਾਜੀ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਹੈ। ਤੇ ਇਸ ਵਾਰ ਤਾਂ ਐਂ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਹੀ ਹੋ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਤੇ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਆਪ ਹੀ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਨੇ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਵੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਮਨ 'ਚ ਪਾਇਆ ਵੀ ਹੁਣ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਖਤਮ ਕਰਨਾ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਨਾ, ਤੇ ਆਪ ਹੀ ਲੱਗੇ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਪੈਰ ਵੱਢਣ। ਤੇ ਚਲੋ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਕੀ ਹੁੰਦਾ। But
ਆਪਾਂ ਬਸ ਇੰਨਾ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਰੀਏ ਵੀ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਨੂੰ ਖਤਮ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਨਾ, ਇੰਡੀਆ ਨੂੰ ਸੁਧਾਰਨਾ ਆਪਾਂ ਬਸ ਚੰਗੇ ਬੰਦੇ ਲੈ ਆਉਣੇ ਤੇ ਗੱਲ ਬਣ ਜਾਣੀ।
ਹਾਂ, ਆਪਾਂ ਜਦ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ, ਆਪਾਂ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਦੀ ਸਟੇਟ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਨਾ, ਸਿਸਟਮ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਇੰਡੀਆ ਦੇ ਤਾਂ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਹੀ ਰਹਿਣਾ, ਉੱਥੇ ਤਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੇ 5,000 ਸਾਲ ਦੇ ਲੋਕ ਵਸੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਥੋੜੀ ਉੱਠ ਕੇ ਚਲੇ ਜਾਣਾ। ਪਰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਆ ਬੜਾ ਭੈੜਾ ਨਾ ਉਹ, ਤੇ ਉਹ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਦਾ, ਹੁਣ ਹਰ ਬੰਦੇ ਦੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਸੋਚ ਹੈ। ਜਿਵੇਂ ਮੈਂ ਸੋਚਦਾ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਵੀ ਸਾਰੇ ਨੇਸ਼ਨ ਆਪਣਾ ਆਪਣਾ ਸੰਵਿਧਾਨ ਲਿਖਣ, ਆਪਣਾ ਆਪਣਾ ਮੈਨੇਜ ਕਰਨ, ਕੋਈ ਹੋਰ ਸੋਚਦਾ, ਦੈਟਸ ਫਾਈਨ। ਯਾ ਜਸਵੀਰ, ਗੋ ਹੈਡ।
I just wanted to touch back on what you were saying about how the West is perceiving India, and they're kind of putting them in check right now. I will also say that the UK is an example of where this can go wrong as well, of where we can see a Western power basically fold to India and capitulate towards everything they want to do. The last major Washington Post article that covered the transnational repression issue and India's network of agents all across the world, they specifically mentioned how more or less UK intelligence, were being bullied by Indian intelligence in the UK, because the UK were looking at the Indian intelligence regarding their activities against the Sikh community, and they were saying these guys aren't even criminals. Like you can't be targeting them like this. You can't be harassing. I think harassing was the exact word that they used. And India still got away with it because, of course, what we've seen with Bayavdar Singh Kanda since then. And this isn't just a thing as well related to the likes of Rishi Sunak and Priti Patel, who of course are linked and I'm sure very significant figures in this, but it goes beyond them. Boris Johnson was famously in bed. He did with the Indian lobby. He did a great thing just before he left because he wanted to make it up to the Sikh community, I think, where he said that Jagtar Singh Johal's imprisonment is arbitrary, but that's not been repeated since. And I would say that even Labour government are showing closer relations. So it's both sides in the UK. So I think, again, I just wanted to underline the point that we can't have too much faith in these Western superpowers either. I think the UK is an example of that. I know there's specific nuances regarding the UK and differences with North American superpowers, but I'm not sure how much faith we can really have in these Western governments in dealing with the situation either. It's just a changing, constant fluctuation of power and needs. And the Sikh community, we have our own leverage within that as well. So that's where we need to focus, I guess.
Yeah, no, Jasveer, you are absolutely right. But I want to kind of restate, because that you caught it like me, because my communication was not correct. What my reading is, eventually Sikhs are going to help these powers to actually retain on their feet. Today, Britain has totally capitulated in front of the Indian regime. India has caught a citizen of Great Britain, kept him under arbitrary uh, detention for more than almost 7 years now, and have tortured him.
7 years in November.
Have tortured him, and then you still have a British Prime Minister who cannot even raise that issue publicly. Leave alone getting that person released. Leave alone sending an aircraft carrier on the shores of India and saying, hand over our guy or we are going to bomb you. Like, they have totally capitulated. The Brit. To my mind, Britain is no longer sovereign. India has so much influence within Great Britain that it can decide who is going to win what election, who will become prime minister, what policy Great Britain will have, and Britain is totally gone. We should that all is gone, and now the only people who can probably help Britain fight against this influence and control from India are the Sikhs. And we are at the forefront, but Britain is a gone case in my books. What we have is Canada and US. And here also, eventually, mark my words, Jasveer, the national security establishment of Canada and US will have to wake up one day. So will the Britishers have to wake up one day. They are playing along, but how long they are going to play along? The truth is so bitter. It's gonna one day, like every single day, as India gains influence, they will keep using that power. Okay, they will keep getting more arbitrary, they'll keep getting more brazen in, as I said, that hit list today has Singhs as the surname of all the people. It's not going to be Singhs anymore. Very soon it will have, Steves and Martins and Bidens and Clintons. Everybody's name is going to come up on that list. What are you going to do then? Will you keep it? How long are you going to keep your eyes closed? So that's going to happen, and eventually, Jasveer, we have to realize the power. The Panth is very powerful. Our enemy, the Indian state, knows it. Okay, Indian states more than 80% effort on their intelligence and clandestine effort is to control and undermine the Sikhs. There's a reason, because they know the power of the Panth. There is a reason they are behind us. So we eventually we are going to help the free world. Eventually, it will be, the good guys versus the bad guys, and the Sikhs and the Panth will come out powerful. Yeah. Look at you, me. We are sitting here and we are spreading the truth. Like, whom are we scared of? Like, doesn't matter. And we put our pictures out. Like, if this was like some other community on target on a hostile nation, name it, anybody would have done the way like we are sitting here and talking.
That's so true. That's so true.
Right?
Yeah.
ਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਨਾ ਸਿੰਘ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਸੀ, ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਚਲੋ ਉਹਨੇ ਬੁਰੀ ਗੱਲ ਸੀ, ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਇਹ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀ ਹੈ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ 'ਚ, ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਕਿਸੇ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਥ੍ਰੈਟ ਆ ਜਾਏ ਨਾ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਸਟੇਟ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕਤਲ ਕਰਨ ਨੂੰ ਫਿਰਦੀ ਆ, ਉਹ ਵਿਚਾਰਾ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਯਾਰ ਹੁਣ ਕੁਝ ਕਰੋ, ਕੁਝ ਬਚੋ, ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਇਹ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ 'ਚ ਕੀ ਹੈ, ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਚਾਅ ਚੜ ਜਾਂਦਾ, ਤੇ ਇਹ ਰਿਵਰਸ ਹੈ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਇਹ ਰਿਐਕਸ਼ਨ, ਤੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਚਾਅ ਚੜ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਜੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਥ੍ਰੈਟ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਨਾ ਵੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਆ ਰਹੀ, ਅੱਛਾ ਸ਼ਹੀਦ ਹੋ ਜਾਣਾ, ਤਾਂ ਚੱਲ ਬੱਲੇ ਬੱਲੇ। ਤੇ ਇਟਸ ਅ ਵੈਰੀ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਟ ਮਾਈਂਡਸੈਟ। ਜਾਂ ਕੋਇਨ, ਗੋ ਹੈਡ।
No, great discussions today, and there's been some really important things that have been shared. And I think it was Amrit Singh said earlier, what do we do now as a community? And I think, particularly if we're in Canada, we do have, thankfully, even opposition or different leaders coming out making statements. But I think it's really important now that we've got to sort of solidify cohesively, whether through organizations, gurdwaras, even as individuals, see your local, MPs. Like, now is the time. I mean, elections are also coming, but the fact is that this is, and the Canadian government has said that India poses a national, like a threat, and obviously Sikhs are high up there, but to every Canadian. And I think just having that dialogue, like inserting yourself in that space so that they understand just how, if you're confused about something and need more information, but just go and have this conversation, because that's really key as well.
And I have to take this opportunity to call out, and to give big shout out to you, Coin, Rebellious, and other girls. And I see M Singh also. I think there are a couple of people in that group. You are doing such a phenomenal job of reaching out and having these conversations. In the not just Punjabi Sikh spaces, but in the spaces where the the other communities, the white community or the other communities that are here, you're kind of spreading that awareness. And that's where I say, like, and we are gaining nothing. We are trying to do this to kind of be, because we see the danger. What is that movie, Barbarians at the Gate? So the Indians are here to take down US and Canada, and we are the ones who can see them clearly. And unfortunately, our fellow patriots don't see the danger as yet. They will see very soon. So, Coin, my only suggestion is definitely do it, but don't worry too much. Don't stress about it, because even if you are not able to, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਦਪਿੰਦਰ ਭਾਜੀ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਨਾ, ਉਹ ਆਪਣਾ ਕੰਮ ਆਪ ਹੀ ਕਰ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਇੰਡੀਅਨ ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ. They are on this, okay? They will make everybody aware the way they are acting. The more brazen they are, the more overconfident, narcissistic they get, the more they will expose themselves and their true nature of Indian regime. Okay, with that being said, we've had a long, session. I really appreciate everybody who was here, but I would like to now just wrap up a bit. Anybody wants to add anything? I know just we added some last words. if we go ahead.
I was just going to say, just following on from what Coin was saying, reach out to your MPs and so forth. I was encouraging that too. I was just thinking of the example of Sangat in New Zealand, who held a national conference on foreign interference and being targeted by the Indian state. I thought that was a superb example of taking things one step further, because our own organizing, our own internal mobilization is our best form of progress. So yeah, let's use those such examples, take a step forward, and Maharaj Kirpa, we keep getting great results, hopefully.
Yeah, no, we'll get to that. We'll start working on that. So with that, I think it's time to kind of wrap up this space. Hanji, hanji, karo.
Sorry to interrupt.
Nahi, karo.
We should not thank the Indian government. So they're gonna convert the Indian nationalist sects into the Khalistanis. And moreover, like if not Khalistani, but they will think that they're our enemy, that they don't like us. So the nationalist sects I'm talking about. So they may think that Indian government is not liking us Sikhs, not the Khalistanis.
Yeah, welcome. I think the Indian government is doing a job for us. They're helping the Sikhs identify the enemy. ਤੇ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਦੀ ਇੱਕੋ ਹੀ ਕਮੀ ਰਹੀ ਨਾ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸਾਡੇ ਦੁਸ਼ਮਣ ਦੀ ਪਛਾਣ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਈ ਕਦੇ। ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹ 9 ਮਾਸ ਦਾ ਰਿਸ਼ਤਾ ਸਮਝਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ 9 ਮਾਸ ਦਾ ਰਿਸ਼ਤਾ ਆ ਉਹ ਸਾਡੀ ਬੱਖੀ 'ਚ ਖੰਜਰ ਮਾਰਦਾ ਰਿਹਾ। ਸਾਡੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ ਹੀ ਇਹੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਸਾਡੇ ਦੁਸ਼ਮਣ ਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਡਾਊਟ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਸਿੱਖ ਦੁਸ਼ਮਣ ਨੇ, ਪਰ ਉਹ ਸਾਡੇ ਮੂੰਹ ਤੇ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਭਰਾ ਆ। ਹੁਣ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਜੇ ਸਾਡਾ ਭਰਾ ਆ ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਭਰਾ ਦੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਪਰ ਉਹ ਵੱਢ ਸਾਡੀ ਗਰਦਨ ਰਿਹਾ। ਤੇ ਦੈਟ ਆਲ ਦੈਟ ਜਿੰਨੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਗਲਤ ਫਹਿਮੀ ਵੀ ਸੀ ਨਾ, ਉਹ ਗਲਤ ਫਹਿਮੀ ਤਾਰਨ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸ਼੍ਰੇ ਆ ਉਹ ਇਹ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਜਾਂਦਾ। ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਗੱਲ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਸਹੀ ਹੈ ਐਂਡ
ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਜੀ, they're gonna learn the hard way.
ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਦਿੱਲੀ ਵਾਲਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਸਿੱਖਿਆ ਨਾ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਭੁੱਲ ਗਏ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪੰਜਾਬ 'ਚ ਹੁਣ ਫਸੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਆ ਉਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਬੋਲ ਸਕਦੇ, ਉਹ ਚੁੱਪ ਰਹੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ, ਅਸੀਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਬੈਠੇ ਆ ਨਾ, ਅਸੀਂ ਬੋਲਾਂਗੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਲਈ, ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੁਝ ਬੋਲਣ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬਸ ਤਮਾਸ਼ਾ ਦੇਖੋ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਕੀ ਆ। ਤੇ ਐਨੀਵੇਜ਼ ਇਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਆਪਾਂ ਬੰਦ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਐਵਰੀਬਡੀ ਫॉर ਬੀਇੰਗ ਹੇਅਰ ਐਂਡ ਐਪਰੀਸ਼ੀਏਟ ਯੂ ਸਪੈਂਡਿੰਗ ਸੋ ਮਚ ਟਾਈਮ ਐਂਡ ਆਲ ਦ ਐਫਰਟਸ ਐਂਡ ਤੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਦੀ ਕਿਰਪਾ ਨਾਲ ਥਿੰਗਸ ਵਿਲ ਇੰਪਰੂਵ। ਸੋ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਦਾ ਨਾਂ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਆ। ਨਾਨਕ ਨਾਮ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ ਤੇਰੇ ਭਾਣੇ ਸਰਬੱਤ ਦਾ ਭਲਾ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਤੇ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।